Chapter 637. At this point, Yu Qianqiu angrily pulled out the big black blade from the ground. He waved the blade twice and pointed it at Hu Yuntian's nose. Senior Xikong, the truth is in front of us. Hurry up and capture these evildoers and punish them severely. Don't let them escape. Looking at his impatient look, it was as if he wanted Xikong Ju's help to capture them. Xikong Ju couldn't help but roll his eyes. What you said is the truth. You want to capture them? In the air, a fatty dressed in blue hugged his belly as he laughed. This person was none other than Pei Fong. Actually, there were many people who wanted to laugh. Nongzhu was one of them. However, she forced herself not to laugh out loud. The corner of Wen Lanfeng's mouth curled into a smile. Hu Yuntian was so angry that he almost became muddle-headed. He immediately roared. Who said we were going to run? If you're not going to run, then plead guilty obediently and save us the trouble. Yu Qianqiu waved his blade at Xikong Ju and the rest. In the blink of an eye, it became us. It seemed like they were going to carry out the law together. Xikong Ju could tell that Hu Yuntian cultivated under Hu Changshou's protection. Usually, everyone would give in to him. No one dared to talk back to him. He could be unreasonable, but he wasn't good at talking. In the end, he met Yu Qianqiu today. It seemed like he was going to be muddle-headed from anger. If he allowed Yu Qianqiu to continue, Hu Yuntian would definitely plead guilty and submit to the law. This was not the result that Yu Qianqiu wanted. Xikong Ju coughed and said, Hu Yuntian, are Yu Qianqiu's words true or false? He was reminding Hu Yuntian to explain himself. It was useless to keep talking to Yu Qianqiu. The matter wasn't even clear. If he talked about pleading guilty, wouldn't he be looking for trouble? Hu Yuntian. Yu Qianqiu pointed with his blade again, and quickly snatched the topic. He shouted, If you have the ability, swear to the heavens that what I just said was false. Hu Yuntian was at a loss for words. He really didn't dare to swear an oath, because what Yu Qianqiu said before was indeed true. However, the tone he used when it happened was completely different from the tone he used when he explained it in front of everyone. Yan Juexing and Man Hu glanced at each other. This Hu Yuntian might seem smart, but if it wasn't for his father, he wouldn't be able to achieve anything. Idiot! Hu Changshou's face darkened, and he immediately scolded. Why do you care what he said? Just talk about yourself. What does it matter if you say black is white? I'm here. What are you afraid of? He just couldn't figure it out. How could a person who usually looked quite shrewd become like this after being angered so casually? After being scolded by his old man, Hu Yuntian suddenly came to his senses. The fury in his eyes gradually calmed down, and he regained his shrewd appearance. He said to Xikong Ju in a clear voice, Senior Xikong, Yu Qianqiu is talking nonsense. Not a single word is true. It is a fact that he killed people in Cornucopia. Everyone saw it. Please punish him severely, Senior. These two completely different reactions were, because everyone could tell that he was being guided. But this was exactly what Xikong Ju hoped for. Xikong Ju tilted his head and asked, Yu Qianqiu, Hu Yuntian said that everything you said was a lie. What else do you have to say? Yu Qianqiu raised his head and looked at Hu Changshou in the sky, then looked at Hu Yuntian, and revealed a mocking expression of exasperation at Hu Changshou's failure to meet his expectations. He shook his head and sneered. This person is already shameless to the point of lying with his eyes wide open. What else do I have to say? If I continue talking, it will just be a result of not acknowledging each other. It's simply a waste of saliva. Senior Xikong, why don't you be more direct? Xikong Ju let out an "oh," and his eyes flickered as he asked, How to be more direct? Yu Qianqiu stared at Hu Yuntian and sneered, causing Hu Yuntian's hair to stand on end. Suddenly, he saw the blade in his hand pointing at him and said, Hu Yuntian, I'll still say the same thing. There's no meaning in arguing with your glib tongue. Why don't you and I fight one-on-one? And we won't rest until one of us is dead. Whoever dies will be unlucky. How about it? The surrounding crowd went into an uproar again. This madman's killing desire was very strong. He was indeed worthy of the title of butcher. It seemed like he really wanted to slaughter Hu Yuntian. If he didn't have the confidence to slaughter Hu Yuntian, he definitely wouldn't keep mentioning about fighting one-on-one. Although no one said it, They actually hoped that Hu Yuntian would accept the challenge. They just treated it as watching the show. In the crowd, there was a pair of bright eyes. Yin Yu looked at Yu Qianqiu with a complicated expression. With the commotion caused, it was impossible for her not to have heard the news. Originally, she didn't want to come, but for some reason she still came. Furong, Ze, and the rest were currently anxiously pacing around the Wen clan's shop. They really wanted to come over and take a look, but before Nongzhu came out, he ordered them not to come out. Hu Yuntian was challenged by him again, and his expression was dark and gloomy, showing signs of going berserk. If he still didn't accept the challenge, how would he still have the face to mingle in the cultivation world? Right at this moment, Hu Changshou transmitted his voice. Is your face more important or your life more important? Don't let your imagination run wild, and push the problem to Sikongju. Hu Yuntian took a deep breath and cupped his hands towards Sikongju. Senior Sikong. Cornucopia is the territory of the World Commerce Guild. What do you think? Sikongju decisively rejected. Cornucopia doesn't allow private fights. I think this matter will be investigated one day. Why don't we put it aside for now, and deal with it after the matter is investigated? Hee. What if the matter is never investigated clearly? Laughter came from the sky. Pei Fong's fat face shook as he said, in my opinion, Yu Qianqiu's idea is not bad. Instead of dragging it on, it's better to fight to the death. Once and for all, there won't be any trouble in the future. Hu Changshou and Bing Qingzi swept a cold glance over. Pei Fong was obviously up to no good. The latter met their gaze and smiled indifferently. Anyway, no matter who died, he wouldn't lose anything. It seemed that Hu Yuntian was more likely to die. If he could take the opportunity to attack Hu Changshou, why wouldn't he do it? If Yu Qianqiu died, it would be even better if Wen Lanfeng did something else. Yu Qianqiu naturally knew that this damn fatty was up to no good by fanning the flames. But he really wanted to kill Hu Yuntian, while Wen Lanfeng was here. After making up his mind, he sneered. Hu Yuntian, since private fights aren't allowed in Cornucopia, we might as well settle this outside. If you're afraid of me, you might as well bring your 3 guards with you. If you're still afraid, Dao Feng pointed at Yin Juexing and Man Hu and said, it doesn't matter if the 6 of you come at me together. I'll definitely keep you company until death. How about it, do you dare? When he was still at the nascent soul stage, he dared to fight with those at the end of the crossing calamity stage. Now that he was at the crossing calamity stage, there was nothing to be afraid of. In addition, after experiencing the beauty of the animal play, he believed that killing Hu Yuntian wouldn't be a problem. The reason why he also involved Yin Juexing was because he wanted to test his opponent's depth. If possible, he might as well take advantage of Wen Lanfeng's presence to get rid of this trouble in the future. This was simply a naked provocation. 1 against 6, almost forcing Hu Yuntian into a dead end. In the air, Hu Changshou's eyes narrowed. Yu Qianqiu had gone too far, and he couldn't help but get angry. Bing Qingzi also seemed to be a little tempted. Hu Yuntian and Man Hu, who were at the end of the crossing calamity stage, were not necessarily no match for Yu Qianqiu. Maybe he could take the opportunity to take revenge for his second disciple. Good. Pei Fong cheered. No wonder you're the #1 expert below the soul-forming stage. You're really brave. He didn't expect that Yu Qianqiu would even involve Bing Qingzi's disciple, so he was naturally excited. Lu Yanqing frowned at Yu Qianqiu's belligerent behavior. Wen Lanfeng seemed to be a little worried and asked Nongzhu, Yu Qianqiu is only at the early stage of the crossing calamity stage. Won't he underestimate his opponent? Nongzhu replied with a relaxed face. I don't know what he wants to do, but don't worry, he won't do anything that will cause him to lose. Man Hu took a step forward lightly. He also wanted to take the opportunity to take revenge for his junior brother. Unexpectedly, Yin Juexing grabbed him and walked to Hu Yuntian's side, saying with a smile, Brother Hu, Senior Pei has already said that Brother Yu is the #1 expert below the soul-forming stage. How can we defeat him so easily? It's not wrong for us to admit defeat to someone who can be praised by Senior Pei. Originally, he wanted to let Yu Qianqiu and Hu Yuntian do it. It had nothing to do with him, so he kept his mouth shut and did not answer. Unexpectedly, Yu Qianqiu also involved him in Manhu. If Hu Yuntian accepted the challenge, it would be inexcusable for them not to fight. Therefore, they came forward to help Hu Yuntian, the fool who was outwardly smart but inwardly stupid. In fact, it was not that Yin Juexing did not want to fight. In fact, he wanted to try the effect of his demonic power against Yu Qianqiu. The demonic power had been stimulated by Yu Qianqiu's words, and it was running automatically in his body. However, there were too many people watching. The power of the demonic power was extraordinary. Once he fought, he would definitely be exposed. Now that he did not have the ability to protect himself, he had to bear with it. After he got the 7-star blood orchid to improve his cultivation, everything would be easy. Although Hu Yuntian was angry at Yu Qianqiu's arrogance, he was still a little afraid of him. It should be known that the butcher in the cultivation world was famous for killing. Many experts at the final stage of the passing calamity stage had died in his hands. Now that Yin Juexing gave him a way out, he smiled calmly and said, "Brother Yin is right. Since Senior Pei praised him so much, it's not wrong for us to admit defeat." He waved his hand heroically and said, "I admit defeat and stop fighting." Yu Qianqiu was startled. He did not expect that they would admit defeat even after he had said so much. Pei Fong was stunned. He wanted to slap himself. If he had known earlier, he would not have interrupted. Hu Changshu glanced at Yu Qianqiu with a malicious gaze. Then he smiled at Wen Lanfeng and said, "Brother Wen, the heroes are here to watch the show. If this matter continues, we as guests will not give face to the host. I think it's better to follow the host's idea and temporarily put this matter aside. We will talk about it after the investigation. What do you think?" Although others thought that Yu Qianqiu had to listen to Wen Lanfeng did not think that he could be Yu Qianqiu's master. Just as he was about to use words to evade, he heard Lu Yanqing, who was beside him, say, "Isn't it better to solve it peacefully? Why must we fight and kill?" Wen Lanfeng was startled. He looked down and said, "Yu Qianqiu, since they have admitted defeat, you should also take a step back. Let's talk about this later." Yu Qianqiu was speechless. Without Wen Lanfeng's support, he did not have the ability to kill Hu Changshu's son in front of him. Moreover, there was Bing Chengzi eyeing him covetously. He glanced at Nongzhu, but Nongzhu also shook her head slightly. "Damn it! Relying on others to support you is the most unstable thing. In the end, you still have to rely on yourself. Let's wait and see." With a calm face, Yu Qianqiu put away the big black saber. He turned around and walked to the original stall. He took out pots of 7-star blood orchids and shouted to the crowd, selling 7-star blood orchids in large quantities. 200 million per plant. Those who are willing to buy, come quickly. Chapter 638. Everyone could hear the resentment in his voice. The onlookers looked at each other. It seemed that this guy was unhappy that he didn't kill Hu Changshu's son. Hu Changshu's eyes flashed with killing intent. He turned around and disappeared in the air. Hu Yuntian happily said goodbye to Yin Juexing and Man Hu and left as well. The 3 guards went to Yu Qianqiu's stall in fear to clean up their colleague's corpse. This guy was so crazy that he didn't even put Hu Changshu in his eyes. They were really worried that he would do something out of line again. The 3 of them buried their heads in collecting the corpse. They didn't even have the courage to look up at Yu Qianqiu. Sikongju took a deep look at Yu Qianqiu and waved his hand at Mu Lianqiu and the others. He led the crowd away and continued to maintain the order of the cornucopia. Seeing that the show had come to an end and that there was nothing to see, the rulers in the air all disappeared. When Lanfeng looked at Nongzhu and smiled bitterly, as if saying, "This guy won't bear a grudge against me, right?" The 2 of them disappeared together with Lu Yanqing. Bing Qingzi's pupil shrank when he saw Yu Qianqiu's blood orchid. His eyes flickered and he left. Only Yin Juexing and Man Hu didn't leave soon. The stalls that were divided by white lines returned to their original appearance. Regardless of whether it was the stall owners or the people lingering there, their gazes were always faintly discernible as they looked at Yu Qianqiu, filled with reverence. She had heard many rumors about Yu Qianqiu, but this was the first time she had seen him act so domineering. He killed a cultivator in the early stage of tribulation passing, just because of a disagreement, and that cultivator was a disciple of the world-famous Cloud Palace. Then, he brazenly challenged 6 disciples of the Cloud Palace and Ice Palace in front of everyone, including 2 experts in the late stage of tribulation passing. In the end, the disciples of the Cloud Palace and Ice Palace admitted defeat and retreated. In addition, Pei Fong, an expert in the late stage of spirit severing. Now in everyone's mind, Yu Qianqiu was the #1 expert below the spirit severing stage. Mo Xiaojun stood quietly behind Yu Qianqiu, his attitude becoming more and more respectful. Niu Yid had appointed them as the leader, and he did not disgrace them. Yi Cheng, who was standing at the side, looked at Yu Qianqiu with even more admiration. Perhaps it was because of the sense of identity. He didn't feel that Yu Qianqiu's actions were too arrogant. Instead, he thought that Yu Qianqiu had won glory for the Chinese cultivation world. In fact, there were many disciples from various sects who had snuck in from the Chinese cultivation world. Unfortunately, they didn't have the chance to get close to Yu Qianqiu like Yi Cheng did. But it didn't affect their crazy worship of Yu Qianqiu at all. Usually, they didn't dare to raise their heads here. Suddenly seeing such a figure in the cultivation world of Huaxia, they were simply overwhelmed with emotions, unable to calm down, and extremely excited. Was Yu Qianqiu arrogant? Not at all. They couldn't wait for Yu Qianqiu to be 10,000 times more arrogant. It would be best if he could trample all the countries under his feet. After silently admiring him for a while, they left quietly. They wanted to report what had happened here to the Chinese cultivation world as soon as possible. Not long after, Furong Zi, Enchantress, and Amano came running. After Nongzhu went back, seeing that the situation had calmed down, she allowed them to come out. Are you all right? The 3 girls asked almost at the same time. What can happen to me? When Yu Qianqiu saw Furong, the haze on his face turned into a smile, and he asked, "What are you doing here? Do you want to help me set up a stall?" Wow. Zi stared at Xuelan in the stall and exclaimed, "Selling things is such a fun thing. Why didn't you invite me?" Then she crossed the stall excitedly and pushed Yu Qianqiu away. She stood on the seller's seat and looked around, as if she really hoped that someone would come to buy things from her. She usually spent money to buy things, but this was the first time she tasted selling things. Furong didn't want to be outdone. She stood beside Zi happily, and the 2 of them shared the feeling of being a stall owner. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. These 2 women didn't know how hard it was to earn money, and they thought it was a fun thing. If there was a chance in the future, he would let them play every day. Let's see if they would still be in such a good mood. I also want to have a taste of living off a woman. Enchantress stood beside Yu Qianqiu with a smile, while Amano, Zi, and Mo Xiaojun stood side by side, looking around vigilantly. Yi Cheng glanced at Furong from time to time, trying to hide the shock in his heart. Although Hibiscus rarely showed her face on the supporting Immortal Island, she had coincidentally seen her once in the Myriad Fragrance Garden. After careful observation, he confirmed that she was the daughter of Wanfeng Garden's principal elder, Furong. What he couldn't understand was why Furong and Yu Qianqiu were here together. "Senior Yu, this junior still has some matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave now." Yi Cheng suddenly bowed respectfully to Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu smiled and nodded at him. Furong took a glance and realized that this person looked familiar, but she couldn't recognize him, so she didn't think too much about it. After Yi Cheng got permission, he quickly walked out of the treasure basin. He wanted to think of a way to send this shocking news back to Fuxian Island. Yan Juexing squinted his eyes as he sized up Zi, Furong, and Enchantress. His lips curled into a meaningful smile. Yan Juexing nodded at Man Hu, and the 2 of them walked towards Yu Qianqiu's stall. Because of the commotion earlier, the bustling crowd didn't dare to come over, causing the stall to be abnormally quiet. There wasn't even a single person passing by, and everyone took a detour. Just as Zi was feeling depressed, she suddenly saw 2 people walking over. She immediately said excitedly, "Are you buying? How much do you want to buy?" Before she could finish, she realized it was someone she knew from the saber drawing assembly. "Miss Zi, long time no see." Yan Juexing cupped his hands. Yu Qianqiu sneered, "Brother Yan, could it be that you want to wreck my stall again?" When Zi heard that they wanted to wreck her stall, she immediately took out her dark purple bamboo rod and was about to make a move. Brother Yu, it's meaningless to say that. Yan Juexing glanced at the blood orchids on the stall, and said with a smile, I saw that Brother Yu's stall was deserted, so I wanted to invite Brother Yu to visit our Ice Palace's shop when you have time. Perhaps there are people who will purchase a large amount of Brother Yu's 7-star blood orchids. Could it be him? Yu Qianqiu's heart skipped a beat, but he didn't show it on his face. He cupped his hands and said, Thank you for the reminder, Brother Yan. I will definitely pay a visit. Hee. Then I won't disturb Brother Yu's business anymore. Goodbye. Yan Juexing cupped his hands and left with Manhu. Yu Qianqiu stared at the two's departing figures with flickering eyes. Suddenly, he was pulled back to reality by the noise around him. He saw many people rushing towards the center of the treasure basin. What's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? The World Commerce Association put up a new signboard and started selling the 7 treasure pill that can help break through the bottleneck of cultivation. Then we have to hurry and take a look. Maybe we loose cultivators will have a chance to buy it and make a huge profit. When the news about the 7 treasure pill came from the crowd, Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said, Young Master Mo, go take a look. Yes. Young Master Mo accepted the order and left. Yu Qianqiu's eyes narrowed into slits as he muttered to himself. Selling the 7 treasure pill? Yin Baikong, your time of misfortune has come. Ever since he used Niu Yid's identity to sell the last batch of limit-breaking pills to Yin Baikong, he had decided to stop. It wasn't that he didn't want to make more money, but after seeing the various countries and Yin Baikong's secret game, he knew that he wouldn't be able to make a fortune for long. Even though the country's alliance was crushed by Yin Baikong once, none of them were to be trifled with. They definitely wouldn't sit by and watch the World Commerce Association continue like this. To be able to become a lord in the cultivation world, no one was a fool. This was because Yin Baikong's methods of accumulating wealth hadn't reached the point where it hurt everyone's bones. Now wasn't the time to make a move against a colossus like the World Commerce Association. Because some people were still holding a wait-and-see attitude, they were afraid of being attacked by the powerful World Commerce Association. But once Yin Baikong's methods of accumulating wealth hurt everyone's vitality, the various powers wouldn't be able to sit still and would definitely join forces. At first, Yu Qianqiu was curious as to what kind of backing Yin Baikong had to dare to do such a thing. He wasn't a fool, but after thinking about it from his own point of view, he suddenly realized that this old fox was relying on Niu Yid, an immortal from the immortal world. Yin Baikong first boldly threw out several billion, taking the risk of paying first before taking the goods. Then, for every 5,000 limit-breaking pills, he took the initiative to increase the price by 1 billion high-grade spirit stones, constantly expressing goodwill towards Niu Yid. The reason why he didn't hesitate to cooperate with Niu Yid to do business was to tie Niu Yid's interests tightly with his. Once the various powers retaliated, not only would it hurt his interests, it would also hurt Niu Yid's interests. Yu Qianqiu thought that if he really was Niu Yid, who had the strength of an immortal from the immortal world, he definitely wouldn't sit by and watch his interests be harmed. At the crucial moment, he would not hesitate to come out and intimidate everyone. After thinking about this, Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but smile bitterly. If he hadn't taken the initiative, Yin Baikong would have really used this opportunity to rise up and become an unshakable overlord of the cultivation world. As he thought about it, he couldn't help but admire Yin Baikong's foresight. Ever since he found out that Niu Yid was an immortal from the immortal world, he immediately started to make plans. This kind of courage and foresight made others sigh in admiration. As expected, he was someone who could achieve great things. It wasn't by chance that the World Commerce Company could reach its current state. After understanding the implications, Yu Qianqiu knew that this was the end of his fortune, and it wasn't good for him to meddle any further. Thus, he decisively threw out 20,000 limit-breaking pills at once. After making a huge profit, he quickly got rid of Niu Yid's identity. Then, he immediately used Yu Qianqiu's identity to send out 5,007 treasure pills that buried the World Commerce Company. He wanted to see how Yin Baikong would clean up this mess. The only thing that made Yu Qianqiu regret was that he didn't think so far ahead. He regretted getting himself involved with Neo Yud. In the future there might be some small troubles. Demon Domain, Wind Valley. The mountains that stretched for dozens of miles had been sealed off by thick fog for countless years. Raging winds carried phosphorus ghost flames everywhere. Although the environment was harsh, it was a rare cultivation treasure land with abundant chi for the hundreds of thousands of ghost cultivators who lived here. Just as the ghost cultivators were cultivating as usual, a gust of chi that was as thick as ink suddenly erupted violently from the entrance of the 9th netherworld cave. The strong airflow whistled out crazily, and even the nearby rocks that weighed hundreds of kilograms were blown away. In an instant, the dark clouds that covered the sky above the Wind Valley became restless, causing the hundreds of thousands of ghost cultivators to look over. An indescribable feeling of terror spread in the hearts of the ghost cultivators. Just when the Nether cave had just undergone an unusual change. Inside the Ghost King Palace, Yuji led the group of ghost generals and arrived one after another. Braving the strong wind, they landed a few hundred meters away from the Nether cave. All of them were bewildered. Chi that was as thick as ink continuously whistled out of the cave along with the strong wind. Chapter 639. Such a thick energy, for ghost cultivators, was something that they could not wish for. However, such an abnormal change caused the hearts of all the ghost cultivators to be filled with terror. It was a type of terror towards the unknown. Yuji pursed her lips, her hair blowing in the strong wind. The group of ghost generals behind her also had bewildered gazes. Not knowing what was going to happen, Shuntian Island, by Changchun, who was sitting cross-legged in a large room, suddenly opened his eyes and suddenly disappeared from the room. When he reappeared, he was already standing at the edge of the 1,000-mile lake, facing the direction of the Wind Valley, holding a bright moon in one hand. More accurately, it was a mirror that glowed with a bright white light. All of a sudden, the white light retracted back into the mirror. On the surface of the ancient and smooth mirror that was lined with vine patterns, the scene in front of the 9 nether caves suddenly appeared. Even the bewildered Yuji and the others appeared in the mirror. The mirror floated in front of him. Bai Changchun frowned, his eyes filled with puzzlement. He clearly did not know what was going on inside the 9 netherworld cave. After crossing the netherworld flame sea, the majestic underworld gate let out a deep and heart-palpitating sound. The gap of the gate gradually became larger, and the netherworld flame sea that had been burning for who knows how many years began to violently shake. The chaotic airflow caused the various skeletal statues on the huge underworld iron mountain to let out all kinds of cries. Men and women, old and young, large and small. The skeletal statues seemed to come to life, crying to someone about the misfortune of their previous life. All kinds of cries gathered in the underground space, echoing endlessly, creating a scene of chaos. If Yuchencho was here, he would definitely be shocked. The underworld gate that had been closed for who knows how many years was actually slowly opening. When the majestic, thick, and dark underworld gate opened to 1 meter wide, it stopped moving. Behind the gate, there was a black light constantly rotating. Suddenly, 2 white lights flashed. With 2 shio-shio sounds, the 2 white lights turned into 2 figures that stopped in front of the underworld gate. 2 white-robed men that looked exactly the same appeared. Their faces were also snow-white and pale, so pale that it was a bit abnormal, as if they were twin brothers. The 2 of them coldly looked around. After a long time, one of them slowly said, "Everything is normal." Another person nodded and said, "Big brother, why did the Underworld Emperor ask us to patrol the underworld ways of the 72 worlds?" The former shook his head and said, "It was Lady Blackpool's idea." Hearing this, the latter was taken aback and sighed. "Big brother, have you noticed that because the Underworld Emperor doesn't get involved in the affairs of the underworld, Lady Blackpool has been getting involved in more and more things? I'm afraid it's not a good thing. Shut up if you don't want to get into trouble." The former warned, "This is not something you and I should worry about. Don't say such things in the future." "Got it." The latter shook his head helplessly. The former sized up his surroundings once more and said calmly, "Let's go. Let's go back." The 2 of them had just turned around when they suddenly shuddered at the same time. Their gazes burned as they stared at the netherworld gate. Of the 2 knockers on the gate of the netherworld, only one remained. One of the heaven-devouring beast heads was missing not only a knocker, but 2 of its fangs were also missing. No one knew where they went. After the 2 of them stared at it for a while, the latter said in bewilderment, "Look at the saw marks on it. It seems that it was cut off by someone." The former was dumbfounded and speechless for a while. Then he murmured, "Who is so daring to destroy the things on the gate of the netherworld?" The latter scratched his head and said, "Logically speaking, it's impossible. This is not a place that anyone can come to. The people of the underworld can't open the gate of the netherworld from the inside without the token. And the mortals of the outside world can't pass through the netherworld fire sea and come here. Could it be the work of the ghost cultivators in the human world?" The former shook his head and said, "It shouldn't be the ghost cultivators. Once the ghost cultivators come here, their vitality will be burned away by the netherworld fire sea, and they can't return to the human world. Otherwise, their souls will be destroyed, and they will never be able to reincarnate. The only way for the ghost cultivators to come here is to open the gate of the netherworld and return to the underworld. Once they turn back, they will die. It's not this and it's not that. What is going on? It can't fall down by itself, can it? Even if it fell down, we should still be able to see something on the ground. There are clear saw marks on it. Could it be?" The latter suddenly stopped talking. The former turned his head and asked, "Could it be what?" The latter looked around and said softly, "Big brother, don't you think this is a little strange? Why did Madame Blackpool have to patrol the 72 underworld passages at this time? It just so happened that the gate of the netherworld here was destroyed. Could it be that someone inside was ordered to come out and do it?" The former heard this and frowned deeply. After thinking for a long time, he said in a deep voice, "Don't make wild guesses. We just need to report it truthfully. We don't need to worry about other things. Let's go back." The 2 of them turned into 2 white lights and shot into the gate of the netherworld. They instantly disappeared into the black light that rotated like a disc-shaped flowing cloud. Not long after, the gate of the netherworld let out a dull sound that made people's hearts palpitate again and slowly closed. The moment the door closed, the underground space that had been created by the chaotic images slowly returned to normal. Outside the 9th netherworld cave, the surging strong wind suddenly gradually slowed down, and the ink-like Yin-Chi also slowly withdrew. Very soon, everything returned to normal, as if nothing had happened. Standing on the opposite cliff wall, Yuji and the group of ghost generals were looking at each other. None of them knew what was happening in the underworld cave. The group of ghost cultivators waited for a long time, but they didn't see any abnormal reaction. Yuji frowned and waved her hand. "We'll talk about it when we get back." Then, the group of ghost cultivators quickly left the place. Beside the 1,000 Miles Lake on Shuntian Island, Bai Changchun waved his hand after the scene in the Mirror of Silence returned to normal. He waved his hand and kept the mirror as he looked at the sky with his hands behind his back. No one knew what he was thinking. The vast netherworld formed a world of its own. The ultimate place of birth, aging, sickness, and death was the netherworld. 20 big blood-red words were engraved on a huge black stone tablet. They could be seen clearly from afar. The stone tablet and the ancient words revealed the vicissitudes of time. They were simple and unadorned, yet extraordinary. Anyone who saw it would have the urge to prostrate themselves in worship. Under the base of the stone tablet that looked like a mountain, a gate slowly opened. 2 white lights flashed and the gate slowly closed. The 2 people who appeared in front of the gate were the 2 white-robed men who appeared outside the gate to the netherworld. In front of the gate, there were 2 soldiers in iron armor guarding. They were tall and sturdy, their backs were strong and their waists were strong. Their eyes were wide like copper bells as they stared at the newcomers. The 2 white-robed men each turned to face a soldier and took out a green token the size of a palm. They said, "Lu Ben Lu Pao, return to the netherworld to report." They took out the token to prove that they were not ghost cultivators from the outside world. The guards here only recognized the token. Without the token, they would be escorted to the endless dark cliff to work as laborers. One of the soldiers shouted in a booming voice, "Since you have the token, you are not allowed to stay. Leave quickly. His loud voice echoed in the surroundings. The two white-robed men didn't say anything else. They cupped their fists and turned into two white lights as they fled into the distance. The two of them had been flying at high speed in the darkness. It was dark everywhere. Only the red flowing lava could be seen on the ground, mixed with the black smoke. On the path separating the ground from the lava, one could see a group of people working with thick iron chains with their upper arms bare. The sun, moon, and stars could never be seen here, and the sky was always shrouded in darkness. This place was vast and boundless. Nobody knew how high the sky was, or how wide the earth was. There was only endless darkness. It was because this was the underworld, a world of its own. In the vast depths that ordinary people couldn't know of, there were countless powerful overlords who carved out territories to carve out territories. Even though they had high cultivation states and powerful magic power, they had to submit to one person, the king of the entire underworld, the emperor of the underworld. As for the name of the emperor of the underworld, very few people knew it. Almost no one knew it. People only knew that he was called the emperor of the underworld. It was because the emperor of the underworld had existed for too long. All the overlords rose and fell. Only the emperor of the underworld existed forever in the underworld. No one could challenge his authority, even though the emperor of the underworld rarely showed his power, and few people knew what he looked like. Those who tried to challenge the emperor of the underworld were all killed. The emperor of the underworld was a figure that most people in the underworld could only see once in their lives. Even if they saw him, no one would know that he was the emperor of the underworld. The twin brothers Lu Ben and Lu Pao were very lucky. They knew what the emperor of the underworld looked like, because they had seen the emperor of the underworld, and because they worked in the underworld royal palace. Even though their cultivation states were not high, and they were just small errand boys, they had seen the emperor of the underworld. The towering emperor of the underworld mountain. It had been standing there for countless years. Maybe it had been there since the beginning of time. It was the most sacred place in the entire underworld, because the most honorable and holy emperor of the underworld lived in the magnificent underworld royal palace on the peak of the mountain. On the emperor of the underworld mountain, flowing lights were flying everywhere. They were fist-sized fireflies. Even though they looked ferocious, the light balls on their tails were unusually bright. It was these flying insects that illuminated the entire emperor of the underworld mountain. There were 6 mountain peaks on the emperor of the underworld mountain. The emperor of the underworld was on the highest mountain peak. The other 5 mountain peaks were in the shape of a pentagram, surrounding and protecting the most sacred emperor of the underworld. Of course, there was also a magnificent palace on each of the other 5 mountain peaks. The masters of those palaces were all figures whose status was second only to the emperor of the underworld. However, there were differences in status among the 5 masters. The master who lived on the first mountain to the left of the emperor of the underworld was the one with the most power and the highest status among the 5 masters, besides the emperor of the underworld. For many years, the emperor of the underworld rarely showed up and interfered with anything. Most of the affairs were handled by this master. Lu Ben and Lu Pao landed on this mountain peak. To be exact, they landed outside the gate of the palace on the mountain peak. Even though they worked in the emperor of the underworld, they didn't dare to trespass this palace, the dark palace of Madame He Qi. Chapter 640. In front of the grand palace gate, there were 2 rows of soldiers standing guard. All of them wore black iron armor. The strangest thing was that everyone wore a black iron mask on their faces. The mask was hideous and terrifying like a demon. The indifferent gaze from the 2 holes made people shudder. It was Lu Ben's first time here, but he knew that these black-armored soldiers were soldiers transferred from the Onyx Army. The Onyx Army was a powerful army that terrified the people of the underworld. They were Madame Blackpool's personal guards. Many large fireflies climbed on the palace gate, illuminating the scene in front of the palace gate clearly. However, it also showed the oppressive atmosphere in front of the palace gate. A heavily armored general stood in the middle of the palace gate. His gaze behind the mask seemed to be real as he sized up the 2. The eldest of the twins, Lu Ben, was obviously not here for the first time. He nodded at his younger brother Lu Ben. The latter took out a green token and gave it to him. Lu Ben held the 2 tokens and said respectfully, Lu Ben, report to Madam. You come in. You stay here and wait." The general in the middle of the palace gate pointed at the 2 and moved aside to make way. Lu Ben signaled his brother to wait patiently and then walked in with large strides. The inside of the palace was spacious and grand, but it seemed deserted. There didn't seem to be a single person in sight. In the middle, there was a passageway that led straight to the towering onyx palace. Every 10 meters, there was a diamond-shaped stone pillar. The stone pillar was covered with huge fireflies, decorating the entire stone pillar into a lamp post. The path to the majestic onyx palace was more than 300 meters long. Although there wasn't a single person in the square, Lu Ben didn't dare to be careless. He looked straight ahead and maintained a steady pace as he walked forward. He knew that this seemingly free space was actually tight on the inside and heavily guarded. It was several times stricter than the Onyx Palace's defenses. Who knew how many people were secretly watching him? The majestic Onyx Palace was brightly lit. Lu Ben bowed and stopped under the base platform that was dozens of meters high. On top of the steps, a female official wearing a male civil official uniform looked down at him. Although she was dressed in a man's uniform, she had a pretty face and was a beauty. She said coldly, "Madam is bathing. Wait." Then she turned and left. Yes. Lu Ben lowered his head and stood there, not daring to move. In the back hall of the Onyx Nether Palace, there was a place covered by a black veil that was steaming hot. Behind the gauze curtain was a huge bathing pool made of black jade. The warm water in the pool carried a faint smell of sulfur. It flowed into and out of a small ditch. It was a hot spring. A naked and delicate body was soaking in the water. It was a body that was extremely alluring to men. Her plump breasts rose high, and her skin was as smooth as cream. Her figure was moderately plump, and a beautiful face appeared on the surface of the water. Her head was resting on the thigh of the man behind her, and 2 hands were gently massaging her temples. The body that men couldn't refuse was soaking in the hot spring. 5 handsome and strong men surrounded her, not even a single strand of cloth on them. Although those alluring bodies were irresistible to men, there was no trace of impulsive desire in the eyes of these 5 men. Their expressions were cautious. 2 hands were massaging her head, and the remaining 8 hands were carefully massaging various parts of her body. The plump and ravine private parts were not left behind. The 8 hands were moving and massaging every part of her body, resting on the thigh of the man. The beautiful face looked extremely comfortable. Her eyes were hazy, and her lips were slightly open, letting out a soft moan. The gauze curtain was lifted, and the female official who was outside the hall walked in. Seeing that the woman in the pool was enjoying herself, she lowered her head and waited quietly. The woman in the pool closed her eyes and said, "Fei Feng, what's the matter?" Although her words were normal, her tone was full of arrogance. The female official who was called Fei Feng said respectfully, "Madam Lu Ben, who was patrolling the 72 world passages, has returned to report. He is waiting outside the hall." The woman in the pool softly nodded and slightly raised her hand. The 5 massaging men immediately stopped. The 5 men gently carried the naked body out of the hot spring and put her down on the shore. Immediately, someone brought a towel to dry the water droplets on her body. Another person brought a black palace gauze dress and helped her put it on. The black gauze curtain was lifted, and a beautiful woman wearing a black palace gauze dress walked out. Her face was so cold that no expression could be seen on it. She had an extremely noble temperament, which was completely different from her appearance in the hot spring. Dragging a 3-meter-long skirt, she walked to the main hall and gently sat on the seat of honor. Her phoenix eyes coldly looked outside the hall. This was the famous Madame He Qi in the netherworld. The female official Fei Feng quickly led Lu Ben in. Lu Ben walked to the hall and knelt down. He did not dare to raise his head, and reported the results of the inspection in detail. After listening to him expressionlessly, Madame He Qi raised her hand, and Fei Feng quickly led Lu Ben out. From the beginning to the end, Madame He Qi didn't say a word to Lu Ben. In the cornucopia, Yu Qianqiu's stall had been open for a whole day. Except for Yan Zhuixing, No one asked about it. Ziyi waited excitedly for a long time, but as she waited, she became listless. She did not have the patience to do this business that had no customers anymore. In the end, she pulled Furong and ran back. After a whole day, Yu Qianqiu knew that there was no point in continuing to set up the stall. With such a high price, it was estimated that no one would buy it anymore. What made him suspicious was that it was Yan Zhuixing and his men, who bought a large amount of 7-star blood orchids from the treasure tower. He packed up the stall and returned to the Wen family's shop. Nongzhu called him up from the window on the top floor. With a dark face, Yu Qianqiu turned a deaf ear and went back to his room. Sometimes when you were unhappy, you needed to show it and let others know that you were unhappy. Otherwise, others would easily make you unhappy again in the future. The three people on the top floor looked at each other. When Lanfeng smiled bitterly and said, "It seems that he is still angry. He is giving us a hard time. This guy has a problem. I will go and have a look." Nongzhu swaggered down the stairs. Ziyi and Furong were in the room and continued to fiddle with the things they bought. When Yu Qianqiu came in and looked at the room that had almost become a warehouse, he said to Ziyi with a dark face, "Go back to your room." Ziyi naturally wanted to oppose him, but when she saw that Yu Qianqiu seemed to be really unhappy, he stuck out his bright red tongue at Furong, threw away the things in his hands and quickly left. Furong looked at Yu Qianqiu weakly and said, "Are you unhappy? Did I make you angry?" Yu Qianqiu turned around and bolted the door and window. With a dark face he nodded and said, "Yes, you made me unhappy." Furong immediately became nervous. She put down the things in her hands and whispered, "What did I do wrong? I will definitely change." "Well, you haven't let me touch you for a long time. This is your biggest mistake." Yu Qianqiu walked behind her and suddenly laughed. He put his arms around her waist and slid one of his hands directly into her collar. Furong immediately let out a cry of surprise. The couple rolled on the bed and made love. Nongzhu came down and met Ziyi, who was running away. They talked casually for a while. Ziyi told her that Yu Qianqiu was angry. Nongzhu waved her hand disapprovingly and asked Ziyi to go back first. She still swaggered to the door of Yu Qianqiu's room. She pushed the door, but found it was bolted. When she was about to use her divine sense to have a look, Yu Qianqiu's roar suddenly came from inside. "Get out of my way! Don't ruin my plan." Then came the messy voice. Nongzhu was stunned and muttered awkwardly, "What bad luck." She slapped the door heavily and shouted, "When you are done, come up here. I have something to tell you." Then she turned around and went back. After returning upstairs, when Lanfeng saw that he looked strange and asked, "How is it? Wait a little longer. He is busy." Nongzhu could only say so. Wen Lanfeng and Lu Yanqing looked at each other and were curious about what Yu Qianqiu was busy with. They quickly released their divine sense to check downstairs. With their cultivation, this distance was really nothing. They were shocked when they saw it. Their divine sense shrank back as if they were escaping. When Lanfeng looked embarrassed and didn't say a word, Lu Yanqing bit her teeth behind the green veil and blushed. Fortunately, the green veil blocked it, and others couldn't see it. No matter how high their cultivation was, it was not used to peep at others. Nongzhu looked at the slightly shocked reaction of the two and laughed like a thief. She said, "I can't help it. This guy is used to being shameless. He doesn't care about the occasion. It's not the first time I've met him. You just have to get used to it." They waited for a long time. When Yu Qianqiu came, he looked comfortable in the face of the three people who were a little unnatural. He asked as if nothing had happened, "What can I do for you three seniors?" Fortunately, Nongzhu was also thick-skinned. Seeing that he didn't care, she was even more unconcerned. She asked, "How many 7-star blood orchids do you have?" "What?" Yu Qianqiu asked with a vigilant face. "You want my things again?" Nongzhu's words blocked Nongzhu's words. These words made the three people a little embarrassed. Yes, it was true that they wanted his things again. As the person involved, Lu Yanqing said, "Yu Qianqiu, I want to buy a few 7-star blood orchids to study their medicinal properties. But your price is too high. I can't afford that much money. Can you make it cheaper?" She couldn't say it for free. Yu Qianqiu looked at her suspiciously. His eyes flashed and he said, Senior Lu, the person who bought a lot of 7-star blood orchids in Treasure Tower? Nongzhu and Wen Lanfeng also looked at Lu Yanqing when they heard this. The latter immediately shook her head and said, "You misunderstood. I didn't buy anything from Treasure Tower. I just thought of it when I saw you buying a lot." "I see." Yu Qianqiu thought for a moment and said, "When I sell things, I only increase the price. I never do anything like reduce the price. Otherwise I don't sell at all." As soon as these words came out, when Lanfeng's face didn't look good, Nongzhu immediately shouted, "Yu Qianqiu, don't go too far. It's already a great honor for the master of Lingfang Valley to ask for your help. Don't get greedy for money." Chapter 641. Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes and said, "Why are you in such a hurry? Did I say I want money?" Ignoring Nongzhu's astonishment, he asked Lu Yanqing, "Senior Lu, how many do you need?" They were stunned by him. When Lanfeng's eyes were full of praise, and he nodded slightly, Lu Yanqing said with some embarrassment, "How can I ask for your things for free? You use them to make money." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand generously and said, "I didn't say I would give them to you for free." When Lanfeng and Nongzhu's faces darkened at the same time, Lu Yanqing was speechless. She felt embarrassed just now. It turned out that it was not for free. She asked in an unnatural tone, "What are your conditions?" Yu Qianqiu ignored Wen Lanfeng and Nongzhu's murderous eyes and said, "Do me a favor. Help me take 2 people to your Lingfang Valley and temporarily protect their safety." When Lanfeng and Nongzhu were slightly stunned, Lu Yanqing asked curiously, "Which 2 people? You might as well tell me first. If it's suitable, I can promise you." "It's suitable. It's most suitable for them to go to your place, because they are 2 women." Yu Qianqiu smiled somewhat helplessly and said, "One of them is Yi Kun, who lives here. And the other one, Yanyu, the proprietress of Sleeping Spring House, helped me take them away." When Lanfeng was finally relieved when he heard that it was 2 women. But he asked curiously, "Yi Kun is reasonable. What's the relationship between you and Yanyu? Why do you want to take her away?" Yu Qianqiu shook his head and smiled bitterly. "Niu Yid has something to do and left. I was entrusted by Niu Yid to protect her temporarily." "Oh, so that's it." When Lanfeng believed it. But Nongzhu and Lu Yanqing, who understood that Yu Qianqiu was Niu Yid, looked at each other and knew what was going on. "Okay, I promise you." Lu Yanqing nodded. "Thank you, senior." Yu Qianqiu thanked him first and then frowned. "But I'm worried that Yanyu doesn't want to go. I'll have to trouble you to tell her that it's Niu Yid's idea. If she still doesn't want to go, you can take her away by force." "Take her away by force?" Lu Yanqing hesitated. "I know you may not want to do that." Yu Qianqiu turned to look at Wen Lanfeng and said, "I wonder if Senior Wen can help me escort them to Spirit Fang Valley." Nongzhu was speechless. This guy really knows how to pick people. Wen Lanfeng is 100% willing to go to Lingfang Valley, let alone with such a high-sounding reason. Qianqiu was a bit. You is to say, you is, but he seems he is arranging his planning his funeral. Sure enough, Wen Lanfeng's eyes lit up, but he still found a way out of this embarrassing situation. He said with a smile, "It's not impossible for me to help you. The key is how many 7-star blood orchids you are willing to give me." "That's not a problem." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and asked Lu Yanqing, "Senior, how many do you want?" Lu Yanqing asked hesitantly, "How about 5? If you can't, I can give you less." She did want 5 stalks, but when she thought that 1 stalk was worth 200 million, 5 stalks would be 1 billion high-grade spirit stones. Compared to protecting 2 people, this price was too cheap for her. 10. Yu Qianqiu didn't reply to Lu Yanqing, but he said to Wen Lanfeng, "What do you think about giving 10 7-star blood orchids to Senior Lu?" Lu Yanqing was a bit angry. It was her business. Why did he always bring Wen Lanfeng into it? Wen Lanfeng glanced at Lu Yanqing and said, "Don't ask me about it. You ask her." Nongzhu knew what they were thinking and immediately interrupted. All right. It's settled." "Good." Yu Qianqiu readily agreed. He took out 10 pots of 7-star blood orchids from his storage bag on the spot and placed them on the ground. Lu Yanqing saw that things were like this, and there was nothing to do. She put away the 10 pots of blood orchids. After the handover, Yu Qianqiu said to Nongzhu, "You'd better take Furong and Zi back as soon as possible. It may not be peaceful here recently. Don't worry about me. I have a trump card to deal with it." Nongzhu laughed for a while and taught him a lesson. "You'd better take care of yourself. This time you made Hu Changshe lose face in front of all the heroes in the world. He will settle accounts with you sooner or later. Be careful." Seeing that he was so confident, Yu Qianqiu was silent for a little, and then said to the three, "I won't bother you anymore. I have something to do. I have to go to the Ice Palace's shop." Nongzhu exclaimed, "What are you going to do there? The hatred of the second disciple of the Ice Palace has always been on your head. Do you want to die?" "Humph," Yu Qianqiu said arrogantly. "Although his cultivation is high, I'm afraid it's not so easy to kill me. Don't worry. He can't kill me." Then he turned around and left. "Don't be so arrogant. Be careful," Nongzhu shouted from behind. In the main hall of the Dark Nether Palace, the noble and cold Lady Blackpool walked slowly in the hall, with her long dress trailing behind her. Her eyes were flickering for a long time. Suddenly, she waved her sleeve and turned into a ball of black light. She flew out of the palace and directly flew to the highest peak protected by the 5 peaks. On the roof of the ancient, magnificent, sacred, and mysterious Dark Nether Palace, a dozen people suddenly appeared. They stared at the black light in the sky, and their expressions changed. They looked at each other and disappeared again without saying a word. The black light seemed to have found the right direction. It flashed toward the back palace of the Dark Nether Palace, and directly shot toward a small building surrounded by the deep wood forest. Just as it was about to break through the door of the small building, a flash of silver lightning directly repelled the black light with a bang. The black light appeared and Lady Blackpool staggered back for a dozen steps. She didn't stop until she reached a tree trunk in the deep wood forest. Lady Blackpool frowned and yelled harshly, "Qianjun, how dare you attack me?" A silver light flashed in front of the building. A middle-aged man wearing silver armor, with long hair flying in the wind and stubble all over his face, showed up. He stared at her indifferently and said, "Blackpool, this is not a place for you to behave atrociously. Don't you know where this place is? You can't trespass without permission." Lady Blackpool gritted her teeth and said with resentment in her eyes, "I will go wherever I want. It's not up to you, a servant. Get out of my way. I want to see the Emperor of the Underworld." The middle-aged man called Qianjun said emotionlessly, "The Emperor of the Underworld is painting and can't be disturbed. I advise you to leave as soon as possible. Otherwise, don't blame me, a servant, for kicking you out of the Dark Nether Palace." "You." Lady Blackpool didn't know what to say. She knew she was no match for Qianjun. She lifted her dress and knelt down in front of the building, saying, "Blackpool is here to see the Emperor of the Underworld. I have something important to report." After a moment of silence, a nonchalant voice came out from the building. "Qianjun, let her in." His tone was gentle, making anyone who heard it feel comfortable in their heart. It was filled with a calmness that stood aloof from worldly affairs. "Yes." Qianjun bowed to the inside of the building. With a flash of silver light, he disappeared. Lady Blackpool stood up and glanced around with resentment in her eyes. She waved her hand to smooth the long tail of her dress. In the blink of an eye, she had become another noble lady. He slowly walked into the small building. The decorations in the building were elegant, without a trace of luxury. Instead, there were many ancient scrolls piled up. If she didn't see it with her own eyes, she wouldn't believe that the Emperor of the Underworld, who was famous in the Underworld, would live here. She might even think that this was the humble residence of a scholar. Lady Blackpool glanced over the scrolls piled up. A hint of disdain flashed in her eyes, but it soon disappeared. She walked up the wooden stairs to the attic. As soon as she climbed up the attic, she saw the back of a man in a thin white robe. Looking from the back, he looked like a scholar. He was writing in front of a writing desk. "Blackpool greets the Emperor of the Underworld." Lady Blackpool knelt down again. The scholar continued writing. He said without turning his head, "Blackpool, why do you need to see me so urgently?" He looked like a harmless scholar, but no one could imagine that he was the Emperor of the Underworld, the ruler of the Underworld. Madame Heichi stood up and complained. Emperor of the Underworld, why don't you control your subordinates? They even dared to attack me. What will happen to them in the future? They won't even take the Emperor of the Underworld seriously. The scholar let out a noncommittal laugh and said, I don't want to manage anything anymore. That's why I've delegated the authority to you guys. If you guys really don't want to, I can consider managing things again. That way, you guys can have peace and quiet. Lady Blackpool's expression changed. She said with a smile, the Emperor of the Underworld is happy and angry. It was Blackpool who didn't know his place and shouldn't have quarreled with Qianjun. The Emperor of the Underworld has worked hard for the Underworld for many years. As his subordinates, we should share the burden of the Emperor of the Underworld. We shouldn't have any complaints. I'm relieved to hear that. The scholar didn't stop writing. He dipped his brush into the ink and asked, why do you need to see me so urgently? Here's the thing. A few days ago, I sent someone to check the underworld passages of the 72 worlds in the human world. They found that the gate to the underworld in one of the worlds was damaged, and a knocker was stolen. Lady Blackpool said angrily, I didn't expect someone to be so daring. He even dared to damage the gate to the underworld. The people in the human world are getting more and more daring. They obviously don't take the Emperor of the Underworld seriously. Blackpool asked the Emperor of the Underworld to send someone to punish them. The scholar unhappily snorted. The brush in his hand stopped as he coldly said, Heichi, how dare you to ignore my words? Did you forget my warning? Without my permission, no one from the underworld can intrude the human world. The Emperor of the Underworld is angry. The Emperor of the Underworld is angry. Lady Blackpool knelt down again with a frightened expression. She explained, Blackpool didn't let anyone intrude the human world. He just sent someone to check the passage to the underworld. Blackpool has no selfish motives. He did it for the sake of the underworld. That's why he sent 2 servants from the underworld royal palace to carry it out. I believe they wouldn't dare to disobey the order of the Emperor of the Underworld. Remember, the human world is the foundation of the underworld. Without my permission, no one is allowed to intrude and disturb the order of the human world. Having said that, the scholar continued writing and said, It seems that your prestige is getting higher and higher. You can even command the servants of the underworld royal palace. Chapter 642. Though he said it casually, every word was sharp and penetrating. Madame Blackpool was frightened, not knowing if the underworld emperor was just saying it casually, or if he meant it. She forced herself to smile embarrassedly. Blackpool knows his own limitations. Without the underworld emperor's favor, I wouldn't be where I am today. It's good that you understand. The scholar raised his hand and said with his back facing her, You can leave now if you have nothing else to say. Blackpool hadn't achieved her goal yet, so she wouldn't leave willingly. She gritted her teeth and pulled off the black silk tied around her waist. She shook her shoulders slightly, and the black gauze on her royal dress slid off her shoulders, exposing her snow-white and plump body to the air. Madame Blackpool stood up slowly and walked out from the pile of black gauze, walking to the back of the scholar. She wrapped her arms around the scholar's waist and said while twisting her body, Blackpool hasn't served the underworld emperor for a long time. Wait a moment. As you wish. The scholar chuckled. His hand didn't stop moving. Madame Blackpool uttered a happily. She tilted her head to look at the painting scroll on the desk that was about to be completed. Her pupil shrank after a quick glance. A magnificent colorful painting scroll unfolded in front of her eyes. An earth-shattering battle scene was vividly depicted on the paper. The bloody, tragic, and exciting battle was depicted with the tip of the scholar's brush. Countless experts from both the immortal realm and the netherworld surrounded one person, and the person who was surrounded in the picture scroll was full of heroic spirit. He was like a god of slaughter, riding a vigorous red divine dragon into the sky and into the ground, controlling tens of thousands of golden rays, as if he was invincible. Countless people were killed by him, turning into a rain of blood. In the painting, a man in white armor and a man in a golden robe had a terrifyingly high cultivation state. They were entangled with the man riding the dragon. When Madame Blackpool saw the man in white armor, Her naked body stiffened a bit. She knew 6 of the 12 armored warriors behind the man in white armor. One of them was the silver-armored warrior, who had defeated her in front of the small building. The man in white armor, who was fighting shoulder to shoulder with the man in a golden robe, was the Underworld Emperor himself. Isn't this the Underworld Emperor? Madame Blackpool stiffly reached out a white arm and pointed at the white-armored man who was fighting fiercely. The scholar replied with a non-committal hum. His brows were solemn, and his brush did not stop moving. His strokes were fine to the point that the slightest detail could be seen, vividly reflecting the intense battle atmosphere in the painting. After a while, he finally completed a section of the scroll. He exhaled softly and put the brush in his hand aside. He examined the painting with a grave expression and said, "For so many years, this scene has been haunting my mind, and I can't get it out of my head. I might as well draw it, so that people in the future will know about it. After all, not many people know about it anymore." He seems to be interested now. He looks back at Lady Blackpool's seductive body and raises his hand to touch her plump breasts. But Madame Blackpool seemed to be attracted by the content of the scroll. She pointed at the 12 armored warriors and asked, "Are these the 12 legendary underworld generals?" The scholar nodded slightly and said, "That's right. Unfortunately, 6 of my 12 beloved generals died in that battle. Among the remaining 6, black armor died in the war. The army of the dark underworld that you took over is his former subordinate. Now, only the silver armor warrior and the other 4 are left. Silver armor warrior is my personal guard, and he has been guarding the underworld royal palace. The other 4 are the masters of the other 4 palaces on the underworld Emperor Mountain. They are my brothers who have followed me to conquer the world. So, I have to warn you, don't ever let me hear you call them slaves again. Otherwise, I don't mind destroying your cultivation and sending you to the endless dark sea to be a laborer." Blackpool shuddered. No wonder these 5 guys always looked down on her. They were the 12 legendary underworld generals of the underworld. But so what? The legend would be replaced one day. Blackpool, I know I was wrong. I didn't expect them to be the 12 underworld generals who follow the emperor of the underworld. I thought the 12 underworld generals had died a long time ago. Madame Blackpool twisted her body in the scholar's arms. She said in a wrong tone, "They know I am your woman, but they still don't treat me nicely. It is obvious that they don't respect you, Underworld Emperor." The scholar caressed her smooth buttocks and laughed. "Ignorance is not a crime. I won't pursue the past. Also, they have followed me for many years. Even if they didn't contribute much, they still worked hard. You are too young to show off your status in front of them. You should endure it. It is only a matter of face. You won't lose anything. I will listen to the Emperor of the Underworld." Lady Blackpool's naked body wriggled again. She pointed at the man in the golden robe who fought alongside the Emperor of the Underworld and asked, "Who is he? How can he have such a terrifying cultivation?" "Jean Tai of the Immortal Realm." "Oh, he is the Immortal Emperor you speak of. His name is Jean Tai." The scholar smiled. "Immortal Emperor?" Blackpool couldn't help but exclaim. She pointed at the man riding the dragon and asked, "Who is he? How come he forced the Emperor of the Underworld and the Immortal Emperor to fight together?" And she looked at the others who were attacking the man. She didn't finish her sentence because she didn't want to embarrass the Emperor of the Underworld. The scholar gazed at the man riding the dragon on the scroll with a solemn expression. He said slowly, "He came from a place that was sealed by Jean Tai and me. I still don't know how he got out of the place. I don't know his name. I have never heard of him in that place. He called himself the Myriad Swords Demonic Monarch, and his cultivation state is very high. What happened next? Where is that sealed place?" Madame Blackpool asked curiously. "Pa." The scholar slapped her buttocks forcefully with one hand and pinched her chin with the other, saying, "Didn't you say you would serve me? Why do you care so much?" Lady Blackpool was bewildered. Then she undressed the scholar with a flower-like smile. The 2 of them fell down on the ground. Amorous feelings immediately overflowed in the small building. Madame Blackpool tried her best to flatter the scholar and tried her best to please him. After a while, the 2 of them hugged each other. Lady Blackpool leaned on the scholar and complained, You asked me to maintain the order of the underworld, but the gate to the underworld has been damaged. If I don't do anything, how will the people think of me? What are you trying to say? The scholar asked carelessly. At least, you should take back the ring that was stolen, Lady Blackpool said. The scholar's eyes turned cold. He glanced at her and said, I heard that you are still longing for the blue sky, the green water, the singing birds, the fragrant flowers, the sun, the moon, and the stars in the human world. It seems like the rumor is true. However, this was also human nature. She was a woman after all. Women like the feasting and bustling life, and can't stand the endless darkness of the underworld. Emperor of the underworld, you misunderstood me. I don't know who is framing me. Lady Blackpool wiggled her body and said in a spoiled manner, If we don't do anything and don't pursue this matter, someone might destroy the gate to the underworld in the future. It seems like you don't understand what I mean. The scholar humphed. I'm warning you, the cycle of the heavenly Tao has its own destiny. Even immortal Emperor Jin Tai. And I can't get rid of this restriction. If you really want to get rid of this restriction, don't even think about it unless you become a god. Otherwise, you will bring a great disaster to yourself and the underworld. Become a god. Lady Blackpool was startled and flattered. Emperor of the underworld, aren't you the god of the underworld? Who dares to restrict you? If nothing can restrict me, why would I hide in the endless darkness for so many years? There are some things that you won't understand until you reach that level. The scholar stared at the ceiling and sighed. There is something called the cycle of the heavenly Tao. For example, the demon realm. Demon realm. Lady Blackpool propped up her naked upper body and asked, Is it the demonic Tao that was rampant in the ancient times? The scholar nodded. Yes. You won't understand how arrogant the demon realm was if you haven't experienced it yourself, but I know it clearly. The demon realm almost suppressed the immortal realm and the underworld. But what about the retribution? The demon realm was sealed, and the demon children and grandsons who stayed in the other realms were massacred and paid a heavy price. Is the demon realm the place where you and immortal emperor sealed? Lady Blackpool asked. The scholar didn't say yes or no. He continued, Back then, Jin Tai and I didn't realize the cycle of the heavenly Tao. Later, because of the appearance of a pearl in the human world, the immortal realm and the underworld fought in the human world. The souls of countless living beings in the human world were destroyed, and they didn't even have the chance to reincarnate. This was the result of retribution. At that time, Jin Tai and I were blinded by greed and didn't realize this. Lady Blackpool's eyes flashed as she carefully asked, What kind of pearl could tempt you an immortal emperor? The scholar ignored her and continued to murmur, as if he was recalling an unforgettable past. No one expected the retribution to come so fast. At this time, that thousand swords demon monarch came out of nowhere and killed people in the immortal realm and the underworld in the name of enforcing justice on behalf of heaven. Without a choice, Jin Tai and I joined forces again to protect ourselves, but we were still no match for him. We were almost trapped by a grand formation he set up. Luckily, we escaped quickly. Luckily, the Thousand Swords demon monarch was too arrogant and fell into Jin Tai's trap. He was severely wounded and finally fell into our hands. Lady Blackpool was fascinated by the story. She didn't think that there was someone that the Emperor of Hell and immortal Emperor couldn't defeat. How powerful was this person? However, after the Thousand Swords demon monarch fell, the pearl suddenly disappeared without a trace. We couldn't find it no matter how hard we tried. It was as if it was just a dramatic farce, like a dream or a dream. After waking up from the dream, Jin Tai and I looked back at the devastated human world and were shocked. We didn't know how many living beings were killed by this farce. At this time, the heavenly Tao warned us. The entire human world was covered in dark clouds. Countless powerful golden thunderbolts struck and chased after Jin Tai and me. Fortunately, the two of us managed to escape and return. Chapter 643. After that incident, Jin Tai and I realized that there is an irresistible force maintaining the balance in the world. It is invisible and untouchable. No matter who it is, the demon realm, the immortal realm, the underworld, or the human world, Once they break the balance, they will be severely punished. The scholar looked solemn. Madame Blackpool felt her hair standing on end when she heard this. She looked out of the window and smiled unnaturally. Don't worry, Emperor of Netherworld. It has been a long time. Everything is fine now. Fine. Who knows? Maybe it is the preparation of the final score. Once it explodes, I don't know what the consequences will be. The scholar sighed. The Great War in the human world almost killed all the living beings in the human world. It caused such a terrible consequence. It is not something that can be easily forgotten. The demon realm did evil, so Jean Tai and I punished it severely. When Jean Tai and I committed evil deeds, the Myriad Swords demon monarch came to punish us. Fortunately, the two of us managed to escape. Then the golden thunder fell from the sky, but we dodged it again. Madame Blackpool giggled. Isn't it good? It means that Emperor of Netherworld is powerful enough to resist the unknown force. It can't do anything to you. You can't say it like that. I don't want it to happen again and again. I don't want it to happen again. I hope it will be over. If there is a third time, I am afraid that the punishment will be more severe after such a long time. It won't give us any chance to escape. Maybe both the immortal realm and the underworld realm will pay the unforgivable price for their evil deeds in the human world. The scholar suddenly smiled bitterly. I am a bit curious. If there is a final punishment, who will be the one to administer the punishment on behalf of the heaven? Will there really be a person who will administer the punishment on behalf of the heaven? Madame Blackpool asked weakly. His eyes flickered as he thought about how he had always wanted to replace a certain someone. He faintly suspected that he would be the one to administer punishment on behalf of the heavens. Once this thought appeared, it was like a seed that began to sprout in his mind. No one can be sure. It is just a hunch. The scholar pushed her away and stood up naked. Madame Blackpool quickly got up and helped him put on his clothes. Then she put on her clothes too. The scholar looked at her and said, I'm telling you this because I want you to understand that you shouldn't think that the mortals in the human world are easy to bully. There is a pair of eyes in the unseen world that can see everything. Since you've already been born in the netherworld, you're a person of the netherworld. Don't think about the prosperity of the world anymore. No one can get everything they want. I can't, Kim can't, and you can't either. After saying this, the scholar walked to the desk, picked up the brush again, dipped it in ink, and continued with the next part of the scroll. Do you really think that I, Blackpool, am a 3-year-old kid? You can fool me with some nonsense. The Madam of Blackpool didn't think so, but she replied, Blackpool will remember the Emperor of the Underworld's teachings. But what about the knocker that was stolen from the Underworld gate? Are we really going to let the gate to the Underworld break, and just stand there like that? What else can we do? The scholar continued, the gate of the Netherworld has existed since ancient times. I don't know who built it, but the materials used to forge it are extremely strange. Even I don't know what they are. It's easy to break them, but difficult to merge them. Once they are separated, it will be difficult to merge them again. It's said that one has to use the 3 true fire to forge it. But the people who know how to use the 3 true fire have disappeared. What else can we do? Since it's such a precious item, we can't lose it, said the Madam of Blackpool. Oh, you can tell me what you think, the scholar asked. She waited for a while, but the scholar didn't respond. She stopped writing and turned around. Just tell me what you want to say. Please forgive me. The Madam of Blackpool braced herself and said, We can send someone out to find the lost item. Emperor of the Underworld, please don't misunderstand me. I have no intention of disturbing the order of the human world. Think about it. A person who has the ability to break into the gate to the underworld must not be an ordinary mortal. The person who dared to steal the item from the gate to the underworld must have a purpose. Otherwise, who would do such a thing? What if someone uses the lost knocker to forge a treasure that will bring harm to the human world? If we ignore it, what is the difference between that and disturbing the order of the human world? The scholar seemed to change his expression. He asked with furrowed brows, Can we find it? We can try. If we can't find it, then forget it. Madam of Blackpool bowed and said, If the Emperor of the Underworld agrees, I will send someone out to investigate in secret. Whether we can find it or not, we won't disturb the order of the human world. The scholar paused for a while, and turned around to continue writing, saying, just this once. No matter what the result is, there is no second time. If there is a second time, you don't have to serve me anymore. Go to the boundless dark cliff and serve those laborers. This was considered as an agreement. The Madam of Blackpool was delighted. Blackpool obeys your order. I agreed to let you send someone out, but I didn't agree to let you go in person, the scholar said coldly. Madam of Blackpool's joy instantly vanished. She had tried so hard to go to the human world, because she had stayed in the dim netherworld for too long. Outsiders couldn't understand how comfortable a beautiful woman like her was living in the human world. A woman's vanity couldn't be satisfied by a high cultivation state. Even if a group of men who looked like pigs were circling around her, looking at her lustfully every day, wishing they could take off her clothes, throw her on the bed, and press her down, those evasive gazes could still satisfy her heart. But in this place, nobody dared to have any improper thoughts about her. They didn't even look at her lustfully, let alone say those vulgar flattering words. Nobody dared to do that because she was the woman of the underworld emperor. But then again, if it weren't for her beauty, the underworld emperor wouldn't have liked her at first sight and given her so many opportunities. Some women were used to those extravagant occasions, so it was hard for them to calm down and live a boring life day after day. One more day would make them restless. Those kinds of occasions were a fatal temptation for them. Even though she had died on such occasions in her previous life, she had finally created a chance to get some fresh air. But it was denied by the scholar's order. Madame Heiqi's heart was filled with irrepressible anger, but she didn't dare to show it. She bowed and said, as the underworld emperor wishes, Heiqi will leave now. The scholar hummed without turning his head. Heiqi also lost interest in staying. He walked down the small building quietly, and turned into a beam of black light as he fled to the door. The brush on the painting stopped, and was put aside. The scholar's face showed the imposing manner of a person who had been in a superior position for a long time. This kind of indifferent attitude was like the underworld emperor, who had awed the underworld. He called lightly, Qianjun. A beam of silver light flashed in from outside the window. A silver-armored man with long hair appeared. He cupped his hands and greeted with an imposing manner. Underworld Emperor. What has this stupid woman been doing recently? The Underworld Emperor clasped his hands behind his back and asked. Qianjun immediately reported. Recently, she has been in frequent contact with the people of the immortal world. She has also been commanding the army of Dark Underworld to suppress the underworld overlords who are ready to make trouble. In addition, she has recruited some handsome male servants. Other than that, she has been meddling in the affairs of the Underworld Royal Palace, including dispatching people from the Underworld Royal Palace to patrol the underworld ways of the 72 worlds. Should we restrict her? Don't restrict her. Let her do as she pleases. I don't think she dares to overdo it. Otherwise, I will let her know what is worse than death. The Underworld Emperor snorted coldly. Qianjun walked to his side and glanced at the painting on the desk, saying with furrowed brows, Emperor of the Underworld, the power of the army of the Dark Underworld has grown very fast. Some of the older members have been purged and replaced by her trusted followers. Moreover, they have been slaughtering in the underworld, which has already made people panic. The mention of the army of Dark Underworld has changed their expressions. Are we going to let her continue to cause trouble? What's wrong with that? Many experts have emerged in the underworld these years. All of them are restless. Let her suppress them and get rid of those troublemakers. As the Underworld Emperor said this, he patted the bulging silver shoulder guard on Qianjun's shoulder, sighing emotionally. Only a few of our brothers are left. We have to preserve our strength to deal with possible crises. This kind of small fight is not worth your time. We can't let you guys fail miserably. Since the death of the Black Armor Destroyer, I've had this idea. That's why I found this stupid woman. Let her cause trouble. Hee. So that's how it is. I thought you were bewitched by her beauty, Qianjun said with a smile as he touched the painting on the desk. The other brothers are full of anger, and they even want to kill that woman to wake you up. It seems that I have to inform them in advance. Even though I know, I have to tell them to keep acting like this, and keep losing their temper. Don't be courteous to her. Although this woman is stupid, she is not stupid. Otherwise, I wouldn't have chosen her to do this. Don't let her suspect anything, the Underworld Emperor said with a smile while looking outside the window. Life in the underworld is indeed a bit lonely. It's not a bad thing to have such a beautiful woman bewitching me. At least she makes me feel comfortable. Qianjun, do you think I'm right? Hehe. Qianjun laughed heartily. He touched the 12 armored underworld generals on the painting, a hint of nostalgia flashing in his eyes. He took a deep breath and said, Underworld Emperor, do you have any other orders? I'll go find them if there's nothing else. You should have heard what I said to her. The Underworld Emperor's eyes suddenly grew deep, as he said, You have experienced what happened in the human world back then. Keep an eye on that stupid woman. Don't let her do anything stupid. If the heavenly punishment comes, none of us will be able to withstand it. I'll forget about the last time she sent someone out without my permission. If she dares do it behind my back again, it's useless to keep her alive. You destroy her cultivation and throw her to the endless dark sea. You don't need to report to me in advance. Yes, Underworld Emperor. Qianjun cupped his hands and turned into a silvery light, disappearing outside the window. Chapter 644. A figure flew above the cornucopia, and was stopped by more than a dozen figures when he flew to the Derong Nation's Ice Palace shop. Yu Qianqiu showed a baffled expression and asked, Why are you stopping me? Mu Lianqiu, who was leading the law enforcement team, gritted his teeth and said in a deep voice, The cornucopia doesn't allow cultivators below the soul formation stage to fly, especially during the cornucopia meeting. Yu Qianqiu, don't tell me you don't know this rule. Bullsh *T rule. Yu Qianqiu cursed in his heart, but he said in surprise, There's such a rule? I really don't know. Mu Lianqiu's expression was dark and gloomy. He stared at Yu Qianqiu in silence for a while before saying slowly, I hope there won't be a next time. Definitely, definitely. Yu Qianqiu chuckled. Mu Lianqiu waved his hand, and the dozen people quickly flew back. Yan Juexing was already standing in the backyard of the Ice Palace shop after hearing the news. He stared at Yu Qianqiu in the air with a smile and said, Brother Yu, welcome. Please come down quickly for a chat. Yu Qianqiu landed and cupped his hands. How would I dare not come when Brother Yin invited me? The two of them looked at each other and laughed. They were polite, but they each had their own ulterior motives. None of them were good people. Yan Juexing looked at the sky and said, Brother Yu is a hero no matter where he goes. Yan Juexing is really envious that you don't even care about the rules of the cornucopia. It's fine if you don't abide by this kind of rule that only benefits a few people, Yu Qianqiu said sarcastically. Even if I abide by it, no one will say anything good about me. Haha, Brother Yu is indeed honest. Yan Juexing nodded and praised him. I don't have any good points, but I like to speak the truth. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand without a care in the world and sternly said, Brother Yen, let's not beat around the bush. Are you buying the 7-star blood orchid or not? It's not convenient to talk here, right? Yan Juexing looked around and raised his hand. Please come upstairs. Yu Qianqiu glanced upstairs and knew that similar buildings had a soundproof formation. He touched his chin and said, Is there an ambush waiting for me? Yan Juexing smiled and said, Brother Yu has Senior Wen's support. Why should I be afraid? Please. The two of them acted like old friends, smiling side by side as they went upstairs. Just as Yan Juexing pushed open a door, he suddenly heard a shrill scream coming from upstairs. Both of them were shocked, especially Yu Qianqiu, who quickly put up his guard. Yan Juexing's expression changed. He couldn't be bothered with him anymore and rushed upstairs. What the hell? Could it be a trap? Yu Qianqiu was confused. He was worried that it was a trap, but he couldn't help but rush upstairs. When he reached the top floor, he found the room where the scream came from, and carefully pushed the door open. Bing Qingzi, Man Hu, and Yan Juexing were staring at a disciple who was rolling on the ground. The three of them looked at Yu Qianqiu who came in, but no one cared about him at this moment. There were two other disciples beside him who seemed to be panicking. Yu Qianqiu plucked up his courage and walked to Yan Juexing's side. The disciple rolling on the ground was emitting green smoke, as if he was burning. Wrinkles gradually appeared on his face, and he was aging at a visible speed. Yu Qianqiu was secretly shocked. He couldn't help asking in a low voice, "Brother Yan, what's going on? Could it be that your ice palace is enforcing some sect rules and punishing disciples?" Yan Juexing shook his head slightly and said solemnly, "It's the 7 treasure pills sold by the World Chamber of Commerce. There's something wrong with it." Yu Qianqiu was dazed. He knew what the problem was, so he quickly shut his mouth and pretended that he knew nothing. All of a sudden, a huge and threatening aura spread out, forcing them to take a few steps back. The temperature in the room dropped rapidly, making them feel like they were in a world of ice and snow. Bing Qingzi waved his sleeve, and the disciple rolling on the ground floated up into the air. Bing Qingzi's fingers were like the wind, shooting dozens of white light into the important acupoints of the disciple. Then, he pushed out a white mist from his palm and wrapped the disciple up. Apparently, he was treating the disciple. However, to everyone's surprise, the disciple's scream seemed to be even more painful. It was sharp and ear-piercing, as if he was being cut into pieces. Bing Qingzi's face was shocked. The white mist quickly retracted, and the disciple slowly landed on the ground, twitching and rolling on the ground. Everyone looked at each other in shock. What a powerful poison! It can even burn Jin Yuan. Bing Qingzi was shocked. He immediately turned around and stared at Man Hu, shouting, "What the hell is going on?" Man Hu was at a loss and said in panic, "Master, I also don't know what's going on. After I bought the elixir from the treasure tower, I came back directly." Bing Qingzi teleported to the side of the other 2 disciples. He grabbed their wrists and examined them. After a while, he loosened his grip and stared at Man Hu coldly. "It's the same 7 treasure elixir. Why are they fine?" When the 2 disciples heard that they were fine, the fear on their faces turned into relief. I, Master, I really don't know what's going on." Man Hu's face turned bitter. Yu Qianqiu looked at the 2 and found that one had just reached the core formation stage, and the other had just reached the nascent soul stage. He knew what was going on. He couldn't see the cultivation of the person on the ground, but he must have used the 7 treasure elixir to break through to the tribulation stage. Yan Juexing took a step forward and said with a frown, "Eldest senior brother, did you meet anyone on the way here? Could you have been replaced?" "I didn't." Man Hu recalled and said, "I know that many people covet this thing. Moreover, our ice palace got the biggest share and bought 100 of them. After I got it, I didn't stay any longer and came back directly. At most, I met someone I knew on the way and nodded to say hello. Moreover, the elixir was in the storage pouch and never left it. It's impossible for it to have been replaced." Yan Juexing looked at Bing Qingzi, whose eyes were flickering, and said, "That's strange. Eldest senior brother definitely wouldn't harm a fellow disciple. However, it's reasonable to say that the World Commerce Association wouldn't sell poison. Otherwise, they would be going against the whole world. No matter how powerful the World Commerce Association is, they would still be courting death. Yin Baikong wouldn't do such a stupid thing." He stared at the disciple on the ground and said, "Could it be that he was poisoned before this? Otherwise, why are they fine and only he is?" Yu Qianqiu listened to his logical analysis and was speechless. At this moment, the disciple on the ground also stopped. In just a short while, he had become an old man with white hair and a face full of wrinkles. He was unreasonably skinny and looked haggard. He stretched out his hand towards Bing Qingzi, but unfortunately he couldn't move. With 2 lines of tears on his face, he said in a hoarse voice, "Ancestor, ancestor, save me." Bing Qingzi walked over with an ashen face and squatted down to check his body. After a long time, he stood up and sighed. He's fine now. However, his dantian is severely damaged. He can no longer cultivate in this lifetime. You too carry him away and take good care of him." The last sentence was said to the 2 disciples beside him. The 2 disciples didn't dare to hesitate, and carefully carried the person away. Yu Qianqiu was a little surprised. He really couldn't tell that Bing Qingzi treated his disciples so well. However, he felt that it was a little strange. Logically speaking, those who took the fake limit-breaking pill should be dead after breaking through to the tribulation passing stage. Could it be that Chun Feng's alchemy skills were not up to par, and the medicinal effect was discounted? What he didn't know was that cultivators who used the fake limit-breaking pill to break through to the tribulation passing stage would indeed be poisoned to death. However, it was also related to the amount taken. Only when the poison accumulated would it be able to kill a person. As for the disciple just now, he had only consumed a pseudo-restriction breaking pill, so he was half dead. In fact, Chun Feng's alchemy skills were already strong enough. How could an alchemist who could refine a pill with pill halo be weak? Master! Man who walked in front of Bing Qingzi and didn't know what to say. Bing Qingzi coldly glanced at Yu Qianqiu and muttered, "There is still no conclusion to this matter, and it needs to be investigated. I will go and see if the others have the same reaction." With that, he disappeared. As soon as Bing Qingzi left, Yu Qianqiu felt the pressure was greatly reduced. He became lively and said, "I say, state preceptor man who? Why did you come here to join in the fun instead of being a state preceptor? Look at what happened now. You almost killed someone. Fortunately, you didn't kill anyone, or else you would have committed a great sin." "You," Man who angrily said, "Yu Qianqiu, don't be hypocritical here. Haven't you killed a lot of people?" "Do I need to be hypocritical? I admit that I have killed a lot of people. Maybe I will kill even more people." That's not right," Yu Qianqiu suddenly said suspiciously. "Listening to what you said, could it be that you want to kill that disciple just now?" Man who almost choked to death. How could this label be randomly put on him? He immediately flew into a rage and said, "I want to kill you. Are you trying to scare me?" Yu Qianqiu raised his sleeves and sneered. "Why don't you give it a try and see who will kill who? Brother Yu, what you are doing is a bit unkind. You are rubbing salt on the wound." After Yan Zhuixing warned Yu Qianqiu, he immediately pulled back the rioting man who and comforted him. "Eldest senior brother, don't worry. Master and I both believe in you." Yu Qianqiu laughed and waved his hand. "Take it as me talking too much. Anyway, it has nothing to do with me. I say, Brother Yan, are you going to buy the 7-star blood orchid or not? If not, I will leave." "Buy, of course I will buy." Yan Zhuixing pressed on Man Hu's shoulder, indicating him to restrain himself. Then he turned around and asked, "I wonder how many 7-star blood orchids Brother Yu has? You don't have to worry about this as long as you can afford it." Yu Qianqiu touched his nose and asked, "Brother Yan, I have a question, but I don't know if it is convenient for me to answer it. What do you want so many 7-star blood orchids for?" He knew that it was useless to ask, but he still couldn't help but want to ask. Sure enough, Yan Zhuixing said perfunctorily, "We naturally have our use. Brother Yu doesn't have to worry about this." Yu Qianqiu looked him up and down and said with a smile, "I heard that Brother Yan has a unique martial art. Is it related to the martial art that you are practicing to buy so many blood orchids?" Chapter 645. Yan Zhuixing's eyes were slightly cold, and he said in a deep voice, "Brother Yu, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. This matter has been proven to be false. It's better not to mention hearsay again, so as to avoid misunderstanding. This matter has become a big deal. I'm just curious, so I asked casually." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand disapprovingly, and then asked, "I wonder how many blood orchids Brother Yan wants to buy?" When it came to business, Yan Zhuixing didn't care about him anymore. He said sternly, "It depends on whether Brother you can take care of the price. If it's cheap, buy more. If it's expensive, buy less. Since Brother Yin has spoken, for the sake of old friends, I will naturally take care of the price." Yu Qianqiu touched his chin and thought for a while. The original price is 200 million upper-grade spiritual stones. If Brother Yin sincerely wants to buy, each one can be cheaper by 1,000 upper-grade spiritual stones. Man who snorted on the spot. Something worth 1 billion is cheaper by 1,000. How can you say that? Yan Zhuixing pressed his hand to him and said with a fake smile, "Brother Yu really thinks highly of me. I'm indebted to you for taking care of me." To make a long story short, I want 7 blood orchids. I wonder if brother Yu has brought them? Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, 7 blood orchids are worth 1 billion upper-grade spiritual stones. Does brother Yin bring enough money? Yan Juexing knew that this guy was a sticky candy, and it was meaningless to continue. So he took out 2 storage bags and handed them to him generously. Yu Qianqiu took them and checked the scene. After counting them, there were indeed 1 billion upper-grade spiritual stones. It seemed that the other party had already prepared to buy 7. After putting away the storage bags, he fiddled around for a while before returning another storage bag. Here are 7,000 upper-grade spirit stones. You can count them. Yan Juexing didn't think it was too little. He took the bag and put it away without looking at it. Yu Qianqiu chuckled and placed 7 pots of blood orchids on the ground, saying, 7 pots of blood orchids. Please inspect the goods, brother Yan. The moment the 7 pots of blood orchids were placed out, Yan Juexing's eyes turned as cold as the stars and killing intent surged. Man Hu immediately shouted, Yu Qianqiu, are you playing with us? Great Imperial Advisor Man Hu, what do you mean by that? Yu Qianqiu pointed at the 7 pots of blood orchids on the ground and said in surprise, these are genuine 7-star blood orchids. Don't you know what they are? The 7-star blood orchid on the ground seemed to have no eyes. Dozens of slender leaves grew out of it like a pile of weeds. If it wasn't for its blood-red color and the faint smell of blood, it would be very difficult to associate it with the 7-star blood orchid. The most disgusting thing was that there was not even a shadow of an orchid. To be exact, it wasn't that he couldn't see it, but that it hadn't grown at all. Compared with the ones he sold at the stall before, it was completely a blood orchid seedling. Yan Juexing stared at the blood orchid on the ground and said indifferently, the 7-star blood orchid seedling has 10 leaves. After that it grows 1 leaf every year. After 100 years it blossoms and bears fruit. After another 100 years the fruit ripens and falls. These 7 pots of blood orchid are at most 30 years old. It's too different from the century-old blood orchid that brother Yu sold before. He stared at Yu Qianqiu with cold eyes and said, brother Yu, aren't you going too far by doing this? Brother Yan, don't misunderstand. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand repeatedly and explained, the 10 pots of blood orchid that you saw before have been bought by someone. The rest of the goods are really not good. But these 7 pots are already considered good among the remaining ones. If brother Yin is not satisfied, you can return it. I will never say no. He didn't sincerely sell the blood orchid to Yan Juexing at all. This time, he came purely to see if Yan Juexing would buy it. Therefore he made a few pots of inferior goods. It was fine if the other party didn't buy it, but he couldn't give the other party good things. He wasn't the kind of person who would leave trouble in the future just to make money. He just wanted to find an excuse to make the sale fail. Man Hu sneered. Full of nonsense. I don't think you are sincere at all. There's no need to return it. Yan Juexing put away all the 7 pots of blood orchid. Man Hu immediately transmitted his voice. 8th junior brother, what are you doing? This blood orchid hasn't grown at all. Before he finished speaking, he heard Yan Juexing's voice transmission. Eldest senior brother, you also know that this guy has no sincerity to sell to us. But I'm not a fool. Humph. There is a secret method in the demonic book to accelerate the blood orchid's ripening. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He didn't expect the other party to buy it, even though he deliberately made things difficult for them. He faintly felt that something was wrong. He couldn't help but smile. Brother Yan, you make me feel embarrassed. How about this? I'm also an honest person. I can't bear to see others suffer losses. You can return it first. I will definitely find you 7 pots of mature blood orchid within 3 days. Once he cheated the blood orchid back into his hands, there would be many reasons not to sell it in the future. Yan Juexing smiled faintly. That's too troublesome. If you really feel embarrassed, you might as well return the spirit stones to me. What do you mean? Yu Qianqiu was stunned. Look at my eyes and you will understand. The faint smile on Yan Juexing's face turned indifferent. He said word by word. Magic eye ecstasy. Yu Qianqiu was confused by him. He didn't know what he was talking about, so he looked at his eyes subconsciously. Suddenly, The other party's cold eyes instantly turned blood red. It was extremely demonic and dazzling. The red light flashed and pierced one's heart. There was a boom in his head. Yu Qianqiu immediately felt that something was wrong. He wanted to look away, but he realized that he wasn't listening to his commands. His consciousness instantly blurred. When he came back to his senses, he realized that he was in a sea of blood. His limbs were entangled by the blood vines that extended out from the sea of blood. He couldn't move at all. King Yin Juexing, you actually dared to trick me. B****, just you wait. Yu Qianqiu cursed. Seeing that he couldn't move his limbs, he immediately wanted to use his divine sense to contact Utopia. He wanted to teleport away and settle the score with Yin Juexing later. However, what terrified him was that he couldn't use his divine sense to contact Utopia. He couldn't even circulate the quintessential essence in his body. He quickly looked around and was alarmed. How could such a boundless sea of blood appear in the treasure basin? Clearly, this wasn't reality at all. Could it be that my sea of consciousness is trapped by this sea of blood? Brother Yen, let's talk nicely. There's no need to be angry over a few pots of blood orchids. As long as you let me out, I can have as many blood orchids as you want, and I'll guarantee the quality and quantity. Yu Qianqiu, who was trapped in the sea of blood, shook his head and shouted. Previously he was still cursing, but now that he realized that there was nothing he could do, he immediately gave in. In his words, a wise man doesn't fight when the odds are against him. As long as there's life, there's hope. When man who saw Yin Juexing use his demonic eyes to control Yu Qianqiu, he was stunned for a moment before he immediately laughed out loud. Yu Qianqiu, I didn't expect you to have such a day. Second junior brother, you can take revenge now. Man who couldn't hear the shouts in Yu Qianqiu's sea of consciousness, but Yin Juexing, whose eyes were shining with red light, could hear it. He sneered. Brother Yu, don't you think it's too late for you to say this now? Yu Qianqiu, who was trapped, immediately heard the rumbling sound coming from the sea of blood. It came from all directions, but he didn't know where it came from. He cursed the despicable and shameless beast in his heart. Sure enough, I guessed right. You've practiced some evil cultivation method. It's not too late, not too late. We can talk slowly and raise any conditions. I guarantee that you'll be satisfied. Yu Qianqiu laughed. However, his eyes were looking around in vain, trying to find a way to escape. I really want to have a good talk with you, brother Yu. However, it will have to wait until you become my puppet. Otherwise, brother Yu's endless tricks will make me worry. The demonic red light in Yin Juexing's eyes suddenly brightened. His words were like a devil's voice. Yu Qianqiu, from today onwards Yin Juexing, will be your master. From today onwards, you will follow my orders. In the vast sea of blood, 7 blood snakes suddenly drilled out and hissed. They raised their slender bodies and let out a long hiss. Then, they quickly broke through the blood waves and swam over. Fuck. What the hell is this? Yin Juexing, stop right now. Otherwise, sooner or later, I'll make you. Before Yu Qianqiu could finish his words, he was unable to make another sound. The heads of the 7 blood snakes became thin and drilled into his 7 orifices. Yu Qianqiu's body twisted and stopped moving. The blood vines that were binding his limbs loosened and retracted back into the sea of blood. They turned into 7 blood snakes that were connected to his 7 orifices in the sea of blood. The demonic red light in Yin Juexing's eyes quickly disappeared. He nodded to Man Hu and smiled. He's under my control. From now on, he will listen to my orders. Yu Qianqiu, who was opposite him, stood there motionlessly with dull eyes. Kill him to avenge second junior brother. Man Hu laughed cruelly. His smile was full of joy. Yin Juexing frowned and quickly stood in front of him. He said in a deep voice, Eldest senior brother, don't act rashly. It's not the time to kill him yet. When Lanfeng and the others must know that he's here. If we don't see him, they'll definitely come to us for revenge. Don't cause trouble for master. Man Hu was startled and resentfully gave up on the action of revenge. Although he was eager for revenge, he knew that Yin Juexing's words made sense. Now was not the time to act rashly. Master couldn't deal with Wen Lanfeng's strength. At this moment, a golden light broke through the boundless sea of blood. The sea shone brightly and a golden sun rose. The moment it rose, it immediately suppressed the surging waves of the sea of blood to the point that it couldn't move. A golden light beam shot out from the sun and shone on Yuchincho's 7 orifices that were sealed by the 7 blood snakes. The 7 blood snakes turned into ashes in the blink of an eye. Yuchincho's 7 orifices also began to emit black smoke. The smoke became fainter and fainter. Soon it disappeared without a trace. Yuchincho's nostrils twitched. He opened his eyes, and his gaze gradually became lively. As the golden light beam retracted, the entire sun suddenly erupted with a golden light. The boundless sea of blood couldn't withstand a single blow. Under the illumination of the light beam, it was like a righteous spirit looking down on the world. All demons and evil cultivators had nowhere to hide. They were all killed while wailing. The boundless sea of blood quickly rose into black smoke and dissipated. The sea of blood dissipated, revealing the vast and boundless sky of the universe, dotted with stars that would last for eternity. Chapter 646. The sea of blood in front of him suddenly turned into the stars of the universe. This kind of eternal brilliance made Yuchincho somewhat dumbfounded. This was not the first time he saw this phenomenon. He remembered that the first time he saw it was in the 9th Netherworld cave. At that time, he was also in a predicament. So it was not a dream last time? He looked at the endless starry sky in disbelief, and the countless stars seemed to be staring at him. This illusion disappeared slightly, and in front of him, he saw Yin Juexing and Man Hu talking with confidence and composure, discussing how to play with him, bastard. Fortunately, this old man is blessed with a good life. He actually wants to use me as a puppet. Evil demon bastard. I will eliminate the demon today. Yuchincho was so angry that his teeth itched, but he did not act rashly. He first tried to circulate the true essence in his body. Normal. He then used his divine sense to connect with Utopia, and it returned to normal. Man Hu stared at Yuchincho and asked, "Junior brother, is he really completely under your control now?" Yin Juexing smiled somewhat proudly. Yes, his sea of consciousness and primordial spirit have been controlled by my devil eye. As long as it is my command, he will definitely obey. But if he goes back with this stupid appearance, it is impossible for Wen Lanfeng and the others to not see some clues. I am afraid that even if he goes back alive, it will still be troublesome. Man Hu suddenly revealed a sinister expression. It is better to just kill him and end all troubles. Kill your mother. Yuchincho almost jumped up to beat Man Hu, but he still endured it and continued to maintain his stupid appearance, wanting to probe the two beasts. Yin Juexing slightly frowned. Senior brother, don't be impatient. Revenge is not urgent. Although my cultivation is not enough to control someone with a higher cultivation than me, Yuchincho's cultivation is more or less the same as mine. After being hit by my demon eye ecstasy, he has become my puppet. Even with the help of a late soul transformation expert, he cannot escape my control. Without a way to remove it, it is difficult to break the demon barrier in the sea of consciousness. As long as he is still under my control, it is easy to kill him. Even if I ask him to commit suicide, he will do it. Demon eye ecstasy soul involuntarily. As long as I awaken the control of his consciousness, even if I let him go, he will look the same as usual. It will be very difficult for others to notice anything. Demon eye? Yuchincho was shocked. He didn't expect there to be such an evil spell. I didn't expect the demon eye to be so powerful. Man Hu exclaimed in surprise and said with some joy. So we can place an informer around Wen Lanfeng. He can be of great help at the critical moment. That's one of the reasons why I haven't killed him yet. Yin Juexing stared at Yuchincho and sneered. This brat has always been elusive. Who knows how many secrets he is hiding? I have to interrogate him properly. Not bad. Man Hu clapped his hands and praised. Just in time to ask him where he got so many 7-star blood orchids. Seeing that he had figured it out, Yin Juexing was finally relieved. He stared at Yuchincho and asked, Yuchincho, let me ask you, where are the blood orchids that you previously sold? Yuchincho was happy in his heart, and replied with a dumbfounded expression, I sold them all. Why is the answer the same as before? Yan Juexing frowned slightly and felt that something was wrong. He didn't believe that this guy who was full of nonsense was telling the truth. He paused and asked, "Who did you sell it to?" "Niu Yit," Yu Qianqiu replied. Yan Juexing and Man Hu looked at each other. Both of them had a lingering fear of Niu Yid, this unfathomable and mysterious figure. Yan Juexing asked, "Why did he buy the 7-star blood orchids?" "He said that he can't let the 7-star blood orchids fall into the hands of that little bastard called Yan Juexing. Otherwise, he will harm the world sooner or later." Yu Qianqiu replied. The two of them didn't care about this scolding. Instead, they felt a chill down their spine. It seemed that Niu Yid had really seen through Yan Juexing's background. He could even see that he needed the 7-star blood orchids. Yan Juexing immediately asked, "Do you know who that Niu Yid is?" "An immortal from the immortal world," Yu Qianqiu said ignorantly. "An immortal?" The two of them couldn't help but exclaim. Yan Juexing asked again, "How do you know that he is an immortal from the immortal world?" Yu Qianqiu replied, "I accidentally summoned him from the immortal world at the immortal ascension stage in the fog forest." The two of them looked at each other. They had heard Bing Qingzi say that there might be an immortal ascension stage in the fog forest, but they didn't expect it to be true. Man Hu couldn't help but ask, "Yu Qianqiu, is the treasure left behind by the myriad swords demon monarch real?" "It's fake," Yu Qianqiu replied casually. Who knew that this casual remark of his would cause trouble? Yan Juexing squinted his eyes and stared at Yu Qianqiu. He said word by word in a deep voice, "Yu Qianqiu, I order you to commit suicide immediately to atone for your crime." Man Hu looked at Yan Juexing in astonishment. He didn't know why Yan Juexing would suddenly say something like this. Yan Juexing was just counting the benefits of keeping Yu Qianqiu alive. Now that Yu Qianqiu is of great use, why does he want to kill Yu Qianqiu? What he didn't know was that the person controlled by the demonic, I would only listen to one person. Logically speaking, in such a muddle-headed state, it was impossible for Yan Juexing to reply to him. Naturally, it aroused Yan Juexing's suspicion. However, Yan Juexing wasn't so sure. After all, he didn't have much experience in using it. He didn't know if there was a problem somewhere, so he wanted to give it a try. Yu Qianqiu cursed in his heart. He thought about it a few times, but he couldn't figure out where the problem was. Could it be that his reply to Man Hu gave him away? He was a little depressed. He wanted to play the fool and make use of the two of them, but it seemed like he couldn't make use of them. "Yes," Yu Qianqiu replied in a daze. He took out a big black saber from his storage bag. He raised the saber up high, as if he was really going to commit suicide to atone for his crime. Suddenly, Yan Juexing's eyes opened wide, and he quickly retreated. Yu Qianqiu raised his saber and chased after Yan Juexing. "Dog, hand over your life." Everything happened so suddenly. One was prepared, and the other was ambushed. Yan Juexing couldn't dodge in time, and was about to be slashed. As he retreated, he suddenly clapped his hands and shouted, "Demonic charm, doppelganger." Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. In a hurry, Yan Juexing instantly split into three, and the three Yan Juexing scattered like ghosts. Yu Qianqiu's eyes blurred. He was clearly about to slash his opponent, but who knew that his opponent would suddenly separate like 3 wisps of smoke? His sneak attack failed, and he didn't know which one to chase. The 3 figures gathered behind him, and Yan Juexing's original body was restored in an instant. Yu Qianqiu's intuition sensed the opponent's position, and he swept his saber behind him. At almost the same time, Yan Juexing waved his fist that was surrounded by killing intent and shot over. He shouted, "Little devil fist." Man Hu, who was startled by the sudden change, immediately reacted after the two of them clashed. A cold light flashed out from his storage bag and shot towards Yu Qianqiu without hesitation. The flying sword was faster than Yan Juexing's fist, and Yu Qianqiu spat on it. He changed the direction of his saber and slashed towards the flying sword. Dang! The flying sword was cut into 2 like tofu. The saber turned again to deal with the incoming fist, but it seemed to be a bit late. The black fiendish fist smashed onto the side of the saber. Bang! Yu Qianqiu's palm was numb from the impact, and he had no choice but to let go of the saber in his hand. Otherwise, he would definitely be injured if he forcefully held onto the saber with such a powerful force. Black pieces fluttered in the air, and the big black saber was actually shattered into hundreds of pieces by Yan Juexing's fist. Yu Qianqiu was shocked. He didn't expect Yan Juexing's fist to be so powerful. Seeing that Yan Juexing no longer had the saber in his hand, Man Hu shouted, "Profoundine palm." He teleported over and waved his palm towards Yan Juexing's head. Although it wasn't as powerful as his master's profoundine palm, as long as it hit Yu Qianqiu, the cold poison would be enough to make Yu Qianqiu lose the ability to resist. Devil's Claw. Yan Juexing's fist instantly turned into 5 malevolent claws, and each of his fingers instantly became thin and sharp. With 5 red rays, the claws whizzed over and joined hands with Man Hu to attack from the left and right. The 3 of them soared into the air and quickly exchanged blows. If Yu Qianqiu dared to be arrogant, he naturally had the ability to be arrogant. He wasn't someone to be trifled with, so he naturally had his own trump card. The word explode popped out from his mouth. In that instant, Yan Juexing's pupils shrank as he sensed the terrifying aura that he had seen in the saber-drawing assembly. While he was still in the air, he shouted, "Go!" The 5 claws grabbed onto Man Hu's arm and burst forth with a powerful force, pushing him away. Yan Juexing then rapidly retreated in the air with his arms spread out like a bat. The instant Man Hu's body smashed through the wall, he personally witnessed the fragments of the big black saber explode on the ground. Intense black flames engulfed Yan Juexing in a sea of flames, and a cold and terrifying aura surged over Man Hu quivered from the cold and quickly teleported far away into the air. He exclaimed to the people below, "Junior brother!" Yu Qianqiu didn't dare to let the power of the black flames spread too far, or it would definitely arouse the suspicion of Niu Yid in him. After the black flames exploded, he quickly retracted them back into his body. The instant he leapt into the air, although the entire shop wasn't on fire, it turned a deathly gray color and collapsed. He directly broke through the roof and leapt into the air. There was an uproar on the street. The people nearby all felt a sudden terrifying cold aura, but it disappeared in the blink of an eye, as though it was an illusion. Such a huge commotion immediately attracted the law enforcement guards led by Mu Lianqiu. They surrounded Yu Qianqiu, who was floating in the air. Mu Lianqiu shouted angrily, "Yu Qianqiu, how do you explain this?" Yu Qianqiu ignored the law enforcement guards surrounding him and glanced coldly at Man Hu. Then he looked around and gathered his quintessential essence to speak loudly. "Yan Juexing, I know you are fine. Why are you hiding? Everyone didn't go all out just now. If you have the ability, come out and fight again. Let me have a taste of your demonic technique." His voice resounded in the surroundings. There was no reaction from Yan Juexing, but more and more spectators gathered on the ground. Seeing how condescending he was, Mu Lianqiu immediately said furiously, "Yu Qianqiu, what do you think the World Chamber of Commerce is? It's none of your business. If you don't want to die, then get out of my way." Yu Qianqiu didn't even look at him. He shook his sleeves, and green lights flashed out from his sleeves like floating clouds and flowing water. Countless green flying swords circled around his body and dispersed. Chapter 647. The law enforcement guards surrounding Yu Qianqiu were forced away by the ever-growing group of flying swords. Mu Lianqiu's expression was gloomy, and he wished for nothing more than to take down Yu Qianqiu on the spot. However, he knew clearly in his heart that the targets of law enforcement and punishment didn't include people with deep backgrounds like Yu Qianqiu. It was fine to frighten ordinary cultivators, but once he acted rashly, the consequences weren't something he could bear. There were some things that everyone was well aware of, and it was important to give each other face. However, people like Yu Qianqiu did not follow common sense at all. He caused trouble again and again, treating cornucopia's rules like bullsh*t. The strict image that Mu Lianqiu had painstakingly built up for the world commerce was destroyed in one day. He unscrupulously tore down the shameful cover of strict law enforcement, allowing everyone to see the ugly face behind it. What rules? They were just bullying the weak. When encountering a powerful person, they immediately revealed their true colors. Yu Qianqiu had always scoffed at this broken rule, let alone now. A total of 2,000 green flying swords hovered in the air. The scene was truly spectacular. No one present had seen a person controlling so many flying swords at the same time. They were all dumbfounded and sighed inwardly. The number one expert below the soul formation stage was indeed not just for show. Actually, this was not the upper limit of what Yu Qianqiu could control. He had tried it at the immortal Ascension platform. With his current early-stage tribulation passing cultivation, he could control 3,000 flying swords at the same time. However, it seemed that it was not stable to control it in a fight. He could only control 2,000 flying swords with ease. The brilliant green flying swords hovered in the air, forming a huge green halo. Yu Qianqiu stood in the center with a murderous aura as he swept his gaze around. He was really angry. His robe swelled up without any wind and fluttered in the wind. He did not restrain his murderous aura at all. He had almost died today. Yan Juexing's demonic technique was a great taboo to him. If he did not get rid of him before he matured, Yu Qianqiu would not be able to eat or sleep in peace. The enmity between the two sides was very difficult to reconcile. Sooner or later, they would have to fight to the death. If he was allowed to grow, it was needless to say who would be the unlucky one. What made Yu Qianqiu the most unwilling was that the 7 pots of blood orchids were very likely to be of great benefit to Yan Juexing's demonic arts. Yet he had to personally give them to him. Inside the Onyx Palace, a black light flashed and turned into the cold and noble Lady Blackpool. However, there was an irrepressible anger in that noble temperament. Even though she was suppressing it, others could still see that she was in a bad mood. Dragging her long skirt, she climbed up to the back seat in the middle of the hall. Her phoenix eyes glanced at the maids on both sides who didn't dare to come close. And she knew that she was a little angry. After slowly calming himself down, he called out, "Fei Feng." Maid Fei Feng walked to the back seat and bowed. "Madam, what can I do for you?" Madam Blackpool said indifferently, "The Underworld Emperor asked me to send someone to the human world to find the lost door knocker. Who do you think should go?" She had no hope of getting out, so she didn't want to get involved in this matter. However, the Underworld Emperor ordered that even if she had to deal with it, she had to pretend to do it. Otherwise, it would be hard to explain to the Underworld Emperor when he asked. Fei Feng bowed and said, "Since it is the Underworld Emperor's order, we should send a smart and capable person. Any commander of the army of the Dark Underworld can be qualified for this position." "Enough!" Madam Blackpool suddenly slammed her palm on the armrest of the back seat. No one knew where the anger came from. Fei Feng knelt down and kowtowed in fear, saying, "Fei Feng said something wrong. Please forgive me, madam." Madam Blackpool was about to say something disrespectful, but she forcefully suppressed it. She looked around, wondering if there were spies of the Underworld Palace here. She put on a smile and said, "You didn't say anything wrong, but the army of the Dark Underworld is responsible for suppressing the riots and maintaining the stability of the underworld. It can't be mobilized easily. Otherwise, if something unexpected happens, I can't explain to the Underworld Emperor." Yes. I didn't consider it thoroughly," Fei Feng said while kowtowing. But she murmured in her mind that there were tens of thousands of commanders in the army of the Dark Underworld. What could mobilizing one commander do? Madam Blackpool said with a smile. Moreover, it is not necessary to mobilize a commander in the human world. Where is Lu Mei? I haven't seen him for a long time. Lu Mei offended Madam last time, and was sent to prison by Madam. Fei Feng reminded her carefully. It is just a small matter. He has been punished. Let him out. Madam Blackpool waved her hand and said, "Tell him to come see me as soon as possible." Fei Feng took the order and left. Soon, she came back with a tall and thin man with green eyebrows and a pale face. As soon as the man stepped into the palace gate, he ran to the back of the palace and kneeled down, crying, "Madam, your servant knows his sin. Your servant knows his sin. Your servant should not have made Madam unhappy." His voice was sharp and shrill. There was a hint of an eunuch's voice. "All right. Don't cry. I forgive you. Come here." Madam Blackpool waved her hand with a smile. Lu Mei immediately crawled to the back seat. He hugged her legs and massaged them gently, He looked up at her and smiled through his tears. Madam, thank you for your forgiveness. Madam, you don't know. I feel worse than death if I don't see you for a day. If you punish me again, please don't put me in prison again. I can't bear the pain of not seeing you. I would rather die at your feet. Madam Blackpool was amused by him and laughed. The haze in her heart disappeared. She then nodded and smiled. I understand your loyalty. That is why I have a good task for you to do as a reward for your loyalty. No, I am not going anywhere. I would rather die than leave Madam. Lu Mei hugged Madam Blackpool's legs and refused to let go. Madam Blackpool's phoenix eyes immediately turned cold. She said indifferently, You dare to disobey me? Lu Mei was startled. He let go of her legs and kowtowed repeatedly. Madam, if you have any orders, just let me know. I will die 10,000 times for you. Flattery sounded nice, but it was impossible for him not to be afraid of death. How could a shameless person not be afraid of death in order to survive? That's right. Madam Blackpool recovered her smile and said, A knocker and 2 animal teeth on the door ornaments of one of the underworld gates in the 72 world passages were stolen. The Emperor of the Underworld ordered me to send someone to the human world to find them. It is such a good task. I think only your loyalty can reassure me. Lu Mei, you won't disappoint me, will you? Hearing this, Fei Feng glanced at him secretly, but didn't dare to say anything. She didn't know what Madam Blackpool was thinking. How could she let a flattering man carry out the task ordered by the Emperor of the Underworld? She should at least find someone with a high cultivation state. Lu Mei looked up at Madam Blackpool in disbelief. It was indeed a good task. Who didn't want to go back to the human world after living in the dark underworld? But he knew what he was capable of. Besides, he had accompanied Madam for a long time. And he knew that Madam Blackpool wanted to travel to the human world. How could she give such a good opportunity to him? He couldn't figure it out. What? You don't want to do it? Madam Blackpool asked in a deep voice. No. Lu Mei waved his hands and said gingerly, But my cultivation state is too low. I am only in the middle stage of the underworld warrior. I am afraid that I will ruin the Emperor of the Underworld's plan and implicate Madam. The cultivation states in the underworld were divided into 4 levels. The Underworld Warrior, the Underworld Saint, the Underworld Venerable, and the Underworld Emperor. Each level was further divided into 3 levels. The top ghost practitioners in the human world, even if they had the cultivation state of the ghost saint, were just mediocre in the underworld. They were at most the outstanding ghosts, but they couldn't form the underworld body. Once they formed the underworld body, they could travel between the 3 realms. Otherwise, they wouldn't dare to expose themselves under the scorching sun. There was a big difference between the 2 levels. You worry too much about this. Madam Blackpool said disdainfully. In the human world, the top swordsmen are only in the last stage of the Huashan realm. In fact, they are not even in the early stage of the underworld warrior. You are in the middle stage of the underworld warrior, so you can be invincible in the human world. What is there to be afraid of? Lu Mei's eyes brightened. How could he forget this after staying in the underworld for so long? His cultivation state in the underworld was not very high, but in the human world, he was definitely a top-notch swordsman. He said with a silly smile, I am stupid. Thank you for reminding me, Madam. I will try my best to complete the task assigned by Madam. Madam Blackpool glanced at him enviously and sent a message to him secretly. You should take care of your business first. After that, I will allow you to stay in the human world for half a month. Remember, write down anything new and tell me about it when you come back. After sending the message, she said seriously, Go find Fei Feng. She will tell you where you are going. After receiving the secret decree, Lu Mei kowtowed with a smile and said, I will try my best to complete the task assigned by Madam. Then he left. In the hall of the Ghost King in the Chiliwind Valley, Yu-Ji and the others still had not figured out what happened in the 9th Netherworld cave last time. Seeing that there was no negative reaction after the incident, they gradually forgot about it. But they still had some doubts. But just as the Ghost Generals gathered to discuss the matter, outside the Ghost King Hall, a fierce wind suddenly blew violently again, causing the outside world to darken. Everyone was shocked. Yuji dashed out first, and led a group of ghost generals to the outside of the 9th Netherworld cave again. However, just as everyone arrived, the violent and angry wind suddenly returned to normal, causing the group of people to scratch their heads in confusion. In the deepest part of the 9th Netherworld cave, behind the 1-meter-wide Netherworld gate, a green light flashed. Lume suddenly appeared and looked around. After the Netherworld gate behind him closed slowly, he turned around and stared at the place where one of the knockers was missing. He laughed in a high-pitched voice. "How dare you? It seems that the cultivators in the human world are tired of living. How dare you steal the thing on the Netherworld gate? Today, I will let you know my power when I come to the human world." Not only did he know how to flatter and boast, but he also had a serious and responsible attitude when doing things. Otherwise, he would not be able to survive under Madame Blackpool's feet until now. Starting from the Netherworld gate, he looked for clues of the theft bit by bit. However, he did not find anything special until he passed through the Netherworld fire sea and landed at the entrance of the cave. He was attracted by some words on the cave wall. Chapter 648. Predecessors plant trees, descendants enjoy the shade. Nianfeng's eyes are sad. I was kind-hearted, so I dug a tunnel to make it convenient for descendants to enter and exit, leaping over 1,000 worries? Green Eyebrows was confused, not knowing what he meant. Nanhai Nongju came here. Yu Qianqiu. There are quite a lot of people here. Lume's eyes suddenly froze. There was a line of handwriting on the hard iron without any pause. Obviously, it was written in one go. It could be seen that the person's cultivation was obviously higher than the previous two. He could not help but murmur. "The world is lonely and invincible, but I have no fate to ascend to heaven. I have long heard that the Netherworld is equal to the world of immortals, and wants to find a strong opponent. What a reckless human cultivator! How arrogant!" He was already laughing sinisterly at the end of the sentence. "By Changchun, the world is invincible. It seems that you are the one who stole the knocker. Ordinary people can't reach the gate of the underworld." Lume laughed sinisterly. He had already found the target he was looking for. He turned into a green light and flashed out of the 9th Netherworld cave. However, he hadn't gone far when he reappeared and stopped. He looked at the tunnel under his feet, and then at the eye of the wind in front of him. After a moment of shock, he finally understood what the line of words meant. It turned out that someone had dug a tunnel in the Netherworld cave and wanted it to be convenient for the descendant to enter and exit. Yu Qianqiu? Another reckless guy. Hehe. I didn't expect the human cultivator to be so arrogant that he dares to destroy the things in front of the underworld. After a sharp laughter, the green light floated up and directly passed through the eye of the wind and disappeared. Outside the 9th Netherworld cave, everyone stared at the entrance for a long time. After a moment of hesitation, Sai Zhangfei and Zhang Ling suddenly cupped their hands and said to Yuji, "Madam, I would like to go to the 9th Netherworld cave to find out what is going on." Yuji shook her head gently and said, "No need, you can't go deep inside. No one knows what is going on inside. Breaking in by force is tantamount to suicide. Let nature take its course. It will explode as long as it doesn't affect us." Before he could finish his sentence, he heard a gasp of surprise from the crowd. A green light flashed out of the cave and turned into a person floating in the air, looking around curiously. The person was tall and thin, wearing a brocade green robe. The most peculiar thing was that there was a pair of green eyebrows on his pale face. No one could see through his level of cultivation, and he came from the 9th Abyss cave. Everyone looked at each other, and they had a faint guess that they did not dare say out loud. Beside the 1,000-mile lake of the Obedient Island, Bai Changchun, who was standing with his hands behind his back, had been paying attention to the movements in the mirror. When he saw the green-robed man coming out from the 9 Netherworld cave, he immediately raised his hand and put away the mirror. He disappeared without hesitation and flashed in the direction of the Chanchiliwin Valley. On the cliff, Yuji gave Ghost General Zhang Ling a meaningful look. The latter took a step forward, cupped his hands and said, "May I know which expert has graced us with his presence in the Valley of Chilly Wind?" The green-robed person ignored his question and coldly checked everyone's cultivation. He didn't find anyone worth mentioning. None of them seemed to be people who could easily leave words on the netherworld iron. He couldn't help but shake his head and laugh in a shrill voice. What a group of pitiful people! After death, they didn't go to the underworld to serve the emperor of the underworld. Instead, they stayed in the human world and became neither human nor ghost. I am the underworld messenger. I have something to ask you. Who is your leader? Come out and answer. The underworld messenger? Everyone was shocked. Just as they had guessed, they all became uneasy. Although Yuji was afraid, as the leader, others could retreat but she couldn't. She squeezed out a smile and bowed. I am the Lord of Chiliwin Valley. What does the underworld messenger want to ask? Oh, a woman? The green-robed person glanced at the ghost generals. She didn't expect the leader to be a woman. A trace of disgust flashed in her eyes. She said indifferently, I ask you something. You have to answer honestly. Otherwise, you will have to bear the consequences. Let me ask you, do you know who stole the knocker from the gate of the underworld? Hearing this, everyone was shocked again. They didn't expect that someone would dare to steal from the gate of the underworld. Yuji forced herself to be calm and shook her head. We really don't know about this. The green-robed person snorted coldly. As the master of this place, how can you not know? Do you want me to punish you before you will tell the truth? Please calm down, underworld messenger. Yuji smiled apologetically. The gate of the underworld is a legendary thing to us. Nobody has seen it. With our cultivation, we won't be able to get there. If someone could get there, their cultivation would definitely be higher than ours. It would be a piece of cake for them to hide from our eyes and not be discovered. The green-robed person thought for a while and nodded slightly. This is the truth. I don't think you dare to lie to me. Let me ask you again. Who has the highest cultivation in this world? Who is invincible? Yuji subconsciously thought of Bai Changchun, but she didn't dare to speak nonsense. She replied again. Underworld messenger, you don't know this. This place is called the Demon Ghost Domain. It is a place where demons and ghosts live together. We live here and never ask about the affairs of the human world. In addition, our cultivation is low, so we don't dare to ask. So we really don't know who has the highest cultivation in this world. What a group of pitiful people. The green-robed person looked at everyone and shook his head with pity. It was as if he was showing off how happy his life in the underworld was. He then asked, let me ask you again. Do you know where a person called Bai Changchun is? Hearing this, the ghost generals suddenly felt a little uneasy. Green eyebrows glanced at them and saw everyone's actions. Then he laughed and said, it seems that you all know this person. I'll tell you the truth. This Bai Changchun is the biggest suspect for stealing the knocker. If you hide anything from me, I'll treat you as an accomplice and punish you severely. Tell me, where is this person? Yuji wanted to say that she didn't know, but everyone lost their cool. It was impossible for her to say that she didn't know. However, she didn't dare to reveal Bai Changchun's location. She rolled her eyes and said perfunctorily, this person has been here before, and his cultivation is very high. She raised her hand and pointed to the west. Go west. There is a place where many soul formation experts live. I heard that person lives there. Her words were more or less a test. She deliberately said that there were many soul formation experts. She wanted to see how the underworld messenger would react. If he was afraid, then there was no doubt that this person was not a match for the torture envoy. At the same time, she could use the time when he was sent away to quickly rush to the torture envoy to report. With the torture envoy around, there was nothing to be afraid of. However, what she didn't know was that her random pointing had caused a lot of trouble for the group of soul formation experts in the treasure basin. The green-robed person looked to the west and nodded. Go west, right? I hope you didn't lie to me. Otherwise, think about the consequences yourself. As soon as she finished speaking, she flew up to the sky and easily passed through the protective array. Once she flashed to the sky above the demon ghost region, she immediately raised her hand to cover her eyes. Under the strong sunlight, she felt really uncomfortable. After she got used to it, she cursed, damn the sun. She turned into a green light and fled to the west. As soon as the green-robed person left, the ghost generals below immediately started discussing. Yuji was even more dazed. She said that there were many soul formation experts in the West, but the underworld messenger was still not afraid. Obviously, his cultivation was very high, and he didn't care about the soul formation experts at all. If even the torture envoy was not a match for him, she would have to face terrible consequences. The ghost generals were not fools. They naturally knew the consequences of the madam's words. After a long silence, Zhang Ling walked over worriedly and asked, "Madam, what should we do?" When Yuji heard this, she quickly restrained her emotions, and a confident look of encouragement appeared on her face. Lord Disciplinary Envoy is famous throughout the world, and his cultivation base is unfathomable. Don't worry, everyone. I'll head to Obedient Island right now to report the details to Lord Disciplinary Envoy. Everyone looked at each other. Although she said that the other party was an envoy from the underworld, his cultivation was definitely not ordinary, so it was strange that they didn't worry. However, Zhang Ling cupped his hands and said with an unusually firm tone, "I am willing to accompany you to Shuntian Island." Yuji smiled indifferently and nodded slightly. Just as she was about to say something, she saw Zhang Ling and the group of ghost generals kneeling down in terror and bowing. "Greetings, Lord Disciplinary Envoy." Yuji suddenly turned around and saw an old man in a green robe standing behind her. He seemed to be staring at the entrance of the 9th Netherworld cave. Looking at his back, who else could it be but the torture envoy? She was so scared that she immediately knelt down and said, "Yuji greets the torture envoy." Bai Changchun slowly turned around. His eyes were shining brightly on his thin face. He glanced at the people kneeling on the ground, and his gaze finally landed on Yuji, who was kneeling on the ground. With an emotionless tone he asked, "Where did the man in green go?" Everyone was shocked. They didn't expect that the torture envoy already knew what happened here. Otherwise, how could he know that there was a man in the green robe? Yuji immediately repeated the conversation between her and the man in the green robe in detail. She didn't dare to hide anything. Bai Changchun looked to the west and snorted expressionlessly. "The underworld envoy? That's exactly what I want. As long as I'm here, how can you people from the underworld do as you please? Let me deal with you." As soon as he finished speaking, he disappeared. A white hole appeared in the west corner of the protective formation, and then it slowly closed. The people kneeling down only dared to stand up after a long time. They all opened their eyes with lingering fear and disappointment. Thinking of the torture envoy's words, they were all speechless. The torture envoy was indeed the torture envoy. From what he said just now, he went to chase after the underworld envoy in the treasure bowl. Yu Qianqiu, who was surrounded by a huge cyan halo, stood in the air. He raised his head and glanced at the sky. With a murderous aura, he shouted again, "Yan Zhuixing, if you still don't come out, prepare to collect your first senior brother's corpse." The onlookers were in an uproar. They once again witnessed Yu Qianqiu's arrogance. Man who was in the air, said sternly, "Yu Qianqiu, aren't you afraid of biting your tongue? If it wasn't for Senior when backing you up, we might not even know who would be collecting the corpse." Chapter 649. What a stubborn duck. Yu Qianqiu snorted coldly. Numerous sword shadows wrapped around him and rose to the same height as Man Hu. He said indifferently, "Are you interested in a duel with me? We'll fight to the death. Don't run away. Those who die can only blame it on their bad luck. If you can kill me, I'll say this in advance. Senior Wen won't look for trouble with you. Everyone can be my witness. Do you dare?" With Yu Qianqiu's current means, he didn't care about experts at the late stage of crossing tribulation. The only problem was that his cultivation was still lacking. If he fought with experts at the late stage of crossing tribulation, he wouldn't be able to catch up if his opponent used teleportation. That was why he provoked Man Hu. First, he set a rule. No one was allowed to run. It was up to Man Hu to agree. "Why wouldn't I dare?" Man Hu shouted. Regardless of whether he could win against Yu Qianqiu or not, he couldn't lose the face of Ice Palace as the chief disciple. Haha, Yu Qianqiu laughed wildly. Good, you've got guts. Stop. An angry shout came. Bing Qingzi suddenly appeared. A group of 300 people appeared on the God of Wealth peak. All of them were lords of spirit severing stage. Their imposing manner was astonishing, but none of them looked good. Even Yin Baikong was astonishingly among them. However, his complexion was even worse than Yu Qianqiu's. His eyes were fixedly staring at Yu Qianqiu, as if he wanted to skin him alive. Bing Qingzi's gaze landed on the collapsed ice palace. His hair and beard stood on end as he roared at Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu, do you really think I won't dare to kill you? Bing Qingzi, why are you angry at a junior? What's there to say? When Lanfeng, Lu Yanqing, and Nongzhu showed up at the crucial moment. When Lanfeng couldn't intervene in the matters between juniors. But when a group of old guys showed up, he couldn't ignore it. However, when Lanfeng had a headache, why was this kid always causing trouble? Couldn't he just stop and rest? When Lanfeng, Bing Qingzi angrily pointed at the shop below and said, "What is the meaning of this? Don't go too far." Nongzhu glanced at it and touched her forehead speechlessly. This matter was getting out of hand. Lu Yanqing was already frowning. When Lanfeng paused and looked at Yu Qianqiu. "Put away your flying sword. What's going on? What happened?" Yu Qianqiu retorted with a question, and then he looked up to the sky and laughed loudly. The flying sword circled and danced even faster, and his killing intent erupted once again. He pointed at Man Hu and said sternly, "Man Hu, do you dare to swear that you will tell me everything that Yan Juexing did to me?" Hearing him say such angry words, everyone's gaze turned towards Man Hu. Barbarian Tiger was caught unprepared. Just a moment ago, he was ready to fight, but now, his heroic spirit suddenly turned into dodgy eyes. He couldn't tell them about Yan Juexing's demonic skill, so he was trying to think of a countermeasure. Everyone could see that something was wrong with his hesitation. Bing Qingzi was shocked when Yan Juexing was mentioned. He looked around but didn't find Yan Juexing. He immediately asked anxiously, "Man Hu, where is your junior brother?" Man Hu transmitted his voice. "Junior brother's demonic skill has been exposed. He should be hiding." But he shook his head and said, "I don't know." Bing Qingzi looked around carefully again. If he couldn't find Yan Juexing, it would be hard for others to find him. He felt a little relieved. However, there was someone who was not satisfied. Nongzhu took a step forward in the air, squinted her eyes and asked in a weird tone, "Yu Qianqiu, what did Yan Juexing do to you?" With Wen Lanfeng's support, Nongzhu didn't want to show up. But hearing Yu Qianqiu's angry words, she guessed that he must have suffered a great loss. Otherwise, he wouldn't have disobeyed Wen Lanfeng. Although he and Yu Qianqiu were always at loggerheads, he couldn't just watch as his old friend Bai Changchun's disciple was bullied. To put it more selfishly, it was the law of the jungle in the cultivation world. Only Bai Changchun's disciple bullied others. How could he be bullied by others? If he really didn't do anything, it would be hard for him to explain to Bai Changchun in the future. When Lanfeng also noticed that something was wrong with Nongzhu, there was a faint murderous intent in her eyes. He was a little surprised, but then he understood. If this matter wasn't handled well, Bai Changchun might get out of the demon domain, and the whole cultivation world would be turned upside down. Although that old guy usually hid in the demon domain and didn't say a word, once he came out, he wouldn't stop until there was a bloodbath. Instead of letting Bai Changchun come out to fight, it was better to solve it in a small area. When Lanfeng immediately pulled himself together and said coldly, "Yu Qianqiu, if you have something to say, just say it. I'd like to see who's playing tricks." A silver light flashed out of the storage bag and floated in front of him. The broad body of the sword was shining with silver light. Giant silver sword. There was a cry of surprise from below. Lu Yanqing looked at Wen Lanfeng in surprise, which didn't match his temper. More than 200 lords of the spirit-severing realm also looked at each other. They hadn't figured out the matter yet, but when Lanfeng had already drawn his sword, it seemed that this matter couldn't be taken lightly. "Damn it! You should have done this long ago. Today, let's join hands and kill Yan Juexing." Yu Qianqiu became more courageous. He stared at Bing Qingzi and sneered, "Senior Bing, you must know why I came to the Ice Palace shop today, right? Don't talk nonsense. How would I know why a junior like you came here?" Bing Qingzi denied flatly. Anyone could tell that he was like a cornered dog that would do something desperate. He had the tendency to go berserk. Pei Fong winked at Qi Jiujuan and Ouyangda, and the three of them stood between him and Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu, speak boldly. Pei Fong sneered. Whether it was true or not, the three of them would benefit the most from defeating Bing Qingzi. That was why the three of them were so proactive in protecting Yu Qianqiu's safety. The gloomy Yin Baikong secretly transmitted his voice to Sikongju. Send more people to set up ambushes at all the passages of Cornucopia. Don't let Yin Juixing escape. It's best to capture him alive. Sikongju quietly left to make arrangements. Hee. Yu Qianqiu put on a fake smile and said, I reckon that Yin Juixing hasn't mastered his demonic arts. Perhaps he's still in the beginning stages. After I lost consciousness for a short while, I actually recovered. I unintentionally overheard his conversation with Man Hu. It turns out that his demon eye ecstasy can turn people into his puppets. No matter how high your cultivation is, you will still be controlled by him. Furthermore, the 7-star blood orchid can help him master his demonic arts quickly. Once he succeeds, he will unify the entire cultivation world. Since he wanted to target Yin Juixing, it was impossible for him to not add oil to the fire. He continued to ramble. As soon as my body returned to normal, I immediately fought with the two of them. TSK. He casually threw a punch called Little Demonic Fist, and actually shattered my big black saber into pieces. Amazing! My saber is a treasure saber that surpasses high-grade spiritual treasure. It actually couldn't block a single punch from him. Once he masters his demonic arts, it will be terrible. What a pity! When he saw that his demonic arts were exposed, and that he couldn't kill me in a short period of time, he didn't bother me and immediately ran away. Everyone saw what happened afterward. Man Hu, the person involved, naturally knew that Yu Qianqiu was taking the opportunity to blow up the matter. He immediately shouted, Seniors, don't listen to his nonsense. He's completely talking nonsense. He and my junior brother have a grudge in China's cultivation world. He's taking the opportunity to take revenge. Bing Qingzi also sneered. Yu Qianqiu, do you really think that we're all 3-year-old kids that can be easily fooled? Everyone looked at each other in dismay. It sounded too mysterious, and they didn't know if it was true or not. But for Pei Fong and the other two, it was enough for them to blow up the matter. Yu Qianqiu raised his brows and said, It's easy to distinguish whether it's true or not. You can call Yin Juixing out and confront him face to face. I have a way to force out his demonic arts. Ignorant junior, who do you think I am? Do you think I have to listen to your orders? Chapter 650. When Yu Qianqiu heard the news, he couldn't help but curse. Bastard. I let him escape. The flying swords that were densely packed around his body were also withdrawn. He quickly flew to Wen Longfeng's camp. The situation wasn't right, it was safer here. Everyone's gaze was focused on Bing Qingzi. Yin Baikong said in a deep voice, Brother Bing, how do you explain this? What do I need to explain? Bing Qingzi tilted his head and sneered. You should think about how to explain to us about the 7 treasure pill. Yin Baikong immediately lost his temper and stared coldly at Yu Qianqiu. The 7 treasure pill that was sold had already claimed dozens of lives. Until now, no one had figured out what was going on. However, Yin Baikong had already locked onto Yu Qianqiu as the biggest suspect. Pei Fong laughed. Bing Qingzi, you're trying to change the topic at the wrong time. If Yin Juixing didn't have a guilty conscience, why would he run? Bing Qingzi gave Man Hu a look, and the latter quickly went to his master's side. The master and disciple had their backs to the crowd, seemingly ready to fight with their lives on the line. Bing Qingzi calmly looked around and said, Fatty Pei, don't fan the flames here. Yin Juixing only went out for a while. Who said he ran away? Hearing that Yin Juixing had escaped from the treasure basin, Bing Qingzi immediately felt relieved. It was a vast primeval forest outside, and more than 2 hours had passed. It wouldn't be easy to catch Yin Juixing again. At the very least, the various forces wouldn't be able to organize a large-scale capture, like last time, in a short period of time. He believed that Yin Juixing could handle it with his emergency ability. Since he didn't run, can Brother Bing summon Yan Juexing back, so that we can ask him face to face? Pei Fong asked. What a joke, how would I know where he went? As Bing Qingzi spoke, he saw many people rushing towards the exit of the treasure basin. It was obvious that the various lords had already secretly ordered their disciples to search for Yan Juexing. He then turned to Man Hu and said, It seems that we're not welcome here, let's go. He couldn't care about anything else now. He had to find a way to help Yan Juexing escape first. I won't send you off. Pei Fong waved his hand generously. He glanced at Im Baikong. The alliance of the three was about to collapse. After Bing Qingzi left, everyone would definitely find Im Baikong to settle the 7 treasure pill. After forcing Bing Qingzi away and suppressing Im Baikong, only Hu Changsha would be left. After resolving these big obstacles, Yan Juexing wouldn't be able to escape. Pei Fong, Qi Jiujuan, and Ouyang exchanged glances, and they couldn't help but reveal a smile on their faces. The stalemate that had lasted for so many years was finally going to end. The primeval forest outside the primeval forest had existed for God knows how long. Yan Juexing gathered his strength and flew wildly in the sky. Once he sensed someone in front of him, he immediately hid in the forest. When there was no movement in the sky, he flew wildly again. Yen, Yen, Yang Shant, Yent stay in the sect. Yen Yent, Donk Yen Ent. Yent from Yen. T. He couldn't stay in the treasure basin anymore since his demonic arts were exposed. Most of the spirit-severing experts in the cultivation world were gathered in the treasure basin. He couldn't resist them with his current cultivation. He made a prompt decision and escaped from the treasure basin without hesitation. If he was a little later, he wouldn't be able to escape. Bing Qingzi alone couldn't deal with so many experts. Moreover, there was Wen Lanfeng behind Yu Qianqiu. At the thought of Wen Lanfeng, Yan Juexing, who was fleeing desperately, was more or less worried that Wen Lanfeng would not let Bing Qingzi and his disciple go. After all, he had attacked Yu Qianqiu, and Wen Lanfeng was obviously supporting Yu Qianqiu. If something happened to Bing Qingzi, he would lose his only backer in the cultivation world. He would have to rely on himself for everything. Yan Juexing touched his storage bag subconsciously, and his eyes became firm. With these 7 blood orchids, he could make a comeback even without Bing Qingzi's support. That day wouldn't be too far away. Considering that something might happen to Bing Qingzi, Yan Juexing didn't escape to the Ice Palace. Even if Bing Qingzi was fine, he wasn't going to the Ice Palace. The lesson of being chased last time was still fresh in his mind. Presumably, various forces had already sent messages and arranged people to wait for him on the way to the Ice Palace. He just wanted to find a safe place to improve his demonic arts and cultivation with the help of the 7-star blood orchids. He wasn't worried that Bing Qingzi and his disciple would be angry at him for abandoning them and escaping alone. They should know that even if he was still in the treasure basin, they couldn't change the outcome. They couldn't protect him at all. Instead, if he escaped, there would be a chance for them to avoid a bloody battle. Because the curse on them would force them to risk their lives to save him. The only thing Yan Juexing couldn't figure out was why his magic eye ecstasy didn't work on Yu Qianqiu. Victory was already in his grasp, but in an instant, he had to flee in panic. The situation was completely reversed. He thought about it all the way, but he still couldn't figure out what the problem was. He took a deep breath and decided not to think about it for now. The right thing to do was to escape as far as possible. Now was the best time to escape. Even 1 more second would be good. Once the pursuers came, he would have to hide in the dense forest below again. Yan Juexing stared at the front with rapt attention as the wind blew past him. Suddenly, the pupils in his cold and firm eyes shrunk. He saw smoke rising from the distant dense forest. In such a primeval forest, there were groups of ferocious beasts. It was impossible for anyone to live here. It must be a cultivator. Yan Juexing suddenly disappeared in the air and turned into 3 wisps of green smoke that drilled into the dense forest below. Then he reappeared. Then he used the charm body movement technique. A shadow quietly stepped on the leaves and approached the place where the smoke was rising. After arriving at the destination, he gently leaned on the branch of a big tree and looked down. In the open space below, a cultivator who looked like an old urchin was rolling up his sleeves and happily roasting a golden and oily wild boar. He seemed to be enjoying it. This person was none other than third brother Xian. Ever since Lu Yanqing settled in the Wen family's shop, she let him go. Third brother Xian naturally had no objections. Without his master's restriction, he was happy and free. Then, the vast primeval forest outside the treasure bowl became his paradise. He searched for all kinds of wild animals, and made up his mind to roast a wild animal that could surpass Yu Qianqiu's. Yan Juexing didn't know him, but he found that he couldn't see through his cultivation. The other party was obviously an expert at the tribulation passing stage. After carefully looking around and confirming that there was no one else, he waved his hand and lightly knocked on the tree trunk. Third brother Xian suddenly looked up and said, "Who is it?" However, what he saw was a pair of demonic red eyes that emitted a soul-stirring light. Third brother Xian's expression instantly became confused, and the stick in his hand fell to the ground. After a while, Yan Juexing restrained the red light in his eyes and let out a sigh of relief. The other party's cultivation was obviously not at the soul-forming stage. Otherwise, it would be difficult for him to use the demon eye ecstasy with his cultivation. Time doesn't wait for me. I have no choice but to take a gamble. Lightly floating down from the tree, he punched the bonfire on the ground with his little magic fist. With a dull thud, a deep pit was formed. After a few punches, he quickly buried the bonfire and the roasted wild boar to prevent the smoke from the fire from attracting the pursuers. Yan Juexing looked at the dazed third brother Xian and asked, "What's your name? What cultivator are you?" "Spirit Fang Valley's third brother Xian." Third brother Xian replied dully. Yan Juexing confirmed and asked, "Your Spirit Fang Valley's Lu Yanqing's disciple, third brother Xian?" "Yes," third brother Xian replied. After getting confirmation, Yan Juexing muttered to himself. His face gradually revealed an expression of surprise, and he muttered to himself, "The heavens really don't want me to die." Then he squinted his eyes as if he remembered something and said indifferently, "Dig out both your eyes." Third brother Xian heard this, and without hesitation, he stuck 2 fingers towards his eyes. Just when he was about to touch his eyeballs, Yan Juexing suddenly said, "Stop." After that, he carried out a few more tests and confirmed that he really had control over third brother Xian. Only then did he relax. Previously, he was afraid of Yu Qianqiu, so he couldn't help but doubt his magic eye ecstasy art. So he had to test it out first before he could be at ease. After testing it out, he didn't dare to dawdle anymore. Danger could come at any time. Waking third brother Xian up from his daze, he conveyed his order and said, "Let's go." Third brother Xian quickly rose into the sky, while Yan Juexing went into the dense forest. The two of them, one in the sky and one in the forest, maintained the same speed as they quickly headed towards Spirit Fang Valley. In the end, not long after, third brother Xian discovered the pursuers before Yan Juexing with his cultivation at the end of the tribulation passing stage. Yan Juexing quickly hid in the dense forest, while third brother Xian stopped in the sky. He turned around and shouted to the others, "Who are you? Why are you chasing me?" The 5 cultivators at the middle stage of the tribulation passing stage obviously knew him. They all cupped their hands and one of the leaders answered, "So it's Senior Xian from Spirit Fang Valley. It's a misunderstanding. We are the disciples of the World Chamber of Commerce. We were ordered to hunt down Yan Juexing who caused trouble in Cornucopia. Senior, did you see any suspicious people passing by?" "Hunt down Yan Juexing? What trouble did he cause?" Third brother Xian said curiously, "I even met him and had a few words with him. I didn't see any signs of him running away." "Senior, you saw Yan Juexing before?" The man's eyes lit up. He cupped his hands and said, "Can you tell me which direction he went?" "I can tell you, but don't talk about hunting. Be careful, Bing Qingzi won't let you go." Third brother Xian pointed to the left and said, "He went in that direction. When you see him, talk nicely. Fighting will hurt the harmony." After knowing where Yan Juexing went, they didn't want to talk to him anymore. The leader smiled and said perfunctorily, "We will remember. We won't disturb you anymore." The 5 of them quickly turned to the left. After watching them go far away, third brother Xian set off again in the direction of Spirit Fong Valley. Yan Juexing emerged from his hiding place and followed closely in the dense forest. After the 5 of them left, they quickly sent a message to Cornucopia. The pursuers of the World Chamber of Commerce quickly gathered in the direction pointed by third brother Xian. Such a big movement naturally couldn't be hidden from the eyes of all the forces. It immediately attracted everyone to chase in that direction. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.